Hi, welcome to twitch.tv/Xevaris, channel Xevaris on YouTube for later. I'm here with...
Hi, I'm Alexandria. I almost gave out my full name. I'm Alexandria, writer slash Twitch streamer, and we are here to talk about the cringe of Rationality rules.
He made a response video directly to Essence of Thought, and we're going to review it today.
Yeah.
All right. Let's begin. And wait, do I have the ability to pause as well, or is that just you? Let me just try playing real quick.
Yeah, just
a big cup of...
There you go.
All right, sweet.
There's your answer.
Right.
Yes.
Can we rewind it to the beginning?
Yeah, yep.
There we go. All right, whenever you are ready.
Okay. Here we go. Here's the let the journey begin.
Why, hello, my fellow apes. I hope that you're well and that you've got a big cup of tea at the ready. Within this video, I'm going to thoroughly break down three things. That being, one, the mistakes that I made within my video titled The Athletic Advantages of Transgender.
What's that vid volume?
What's my vid volume? Is it too low for you? Can't you turn it up yourself?
No, I was just trying to figure out what. High or low? Plot device manager. Is the vid volume high for low? Okay, I turned it up. Okay, sorry about that.
Sure.
Gender athletes. Two, the mistakes that my most prominent critic, Ethel from Essence of Thought, made within her reply. And three, the malice motive that she and others have been and still are ascribing to me. Given this, there's many knots to untie, and so...
Whoa, hold on. I'm pausing. Nobody has described malice on your part. Nobody has been, as far as I'm aware, Essence of Thought hasn't described any form of, actual malice intent on his part. He keeps doing this thing where he's, trying to say, I'm not transphobic, I don't hate trans people, I just say transphobic things, that doesn't make me transphobic. He keeps trying to say, he keeps strawmanning the other people's arguments by saying, you're saying that I am a transphobe inherently, but that's not what anybody's saying.
Well, you see, yeah, I got criticized this briefly on Twitter recently, because apparently I've started using that, and it's just I was just pointing out the problem with gatekeeping and LGBT stuff, where it's just they're just oh, asexuals don't really count as part of the LGBT community because they're not, lesbian, or they only count if they're also lesbian, bisexual, or gay. Otherwise they're just basically just regular straight people. And it's just by that reasoning, straight trans women and straight trans men don't count.
Right. So Pages of Dreams, not quite like that. So Pages of Dreams is saying, I'm not racist, I just say black people are the problem. That's not quite what he's doing. It's more I'm not racist, black people just make up 90% of the prison population.
Yeah.
That's more like what he's doing.
Yeah. Okay. May I continue?
Yeah.
Let's just get straight to it. This is the mistakes of many on transgender athletes.
Oh my god, are you fucking kidding me? Oh my fucking god.
What? He
the mistakes of many? No, it's not my mistakes. It's everybody else's mistakes and maybe my mistakes.
Well, yeah. I mean, he just did a whole apology video about all the things he got wrong, but that was definitely an honest apology. Now here, a week later, here's a video about how everyone else is wrong about just about everything.
Oh my fucking god. We have to. You said Essence of Thought made a response already to this?
Yes.
We're watching that after this. Fuck that.
Oh yeah. No, the Essence of Thought response is great.
Oh my god.
So let's begin by delving into my mistakes. As said within my previous video, I personally believe that my most impactful blunders were not actually my intellectual mistakes, which I'll cover shortly, but rather my tone, narrative, and sheer lack of sensitivity.
Oh, but I'm not transphobic.
Yeah, and also like, it's
Or
not
not
his
being transphobic, I should say.
yeah, it's not his intellectual mistakes. Sure, he got like tons of facts wrong, and they're brought up, but like, that's not an intellectual mistake. That's
What
just
the
a sensitivity mistake.
fuck? Like, dude, no, because he even said in his last video that one of he was talking about how HRT does impact women or trans women
Oh shit.
and whatever, and like that was such a major like intellectual blunder. Like that was the only thing he talked about in his previous video, and now suddenly it's, oh no, it's the tone, not so much all of my factual statements.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm quick setting something up. I created a bit of or I may have been a bit excessive with the spam protection. I forgot to.
Yeah, you were
add to
obsessive
the
with
limit.
that the other day too.
Yeah, there we go. That should be good.
All right.
Now this isn't gonna be like as annoying. Oh, yeah, it'll be fine.
Of which the most prominent example that people have pointed out, and one that I entirely acknowledge, is the clip that I showed of Joe Rogan commenting on Laurel Hubbard.
And everybody's like, this is crazy. She's an inspiration.
Yeah.
No, she's a guy. She used to be a guy, and now she's breaking these women's records. Like, what are we doing? This is crazy.
Yeah.
Within that
Go
moment,
away,
Joe
Windows
was
Defender.
extremely insensitive, and by endorsing it, I was too, and I am genuinely sorry for that.
Okay, so it's extremely insensitive, but not transphobic? That's the point, you dipshit. Is being like that isn't just being insensitive. Like, the kind of insensitivity that you are bringing is the transphobic kind. This is what you're not fucking understanding.
Yeah, but he's totally being rationally transphobic and not like
Ugh. All right. Are we gonna ignore the fact that his microphone looks like a large black thing in his face? At this, like, he's never had the microphone right there, as far as I'm aware, right? Or am I wrong about that?
wait.
The
what?
microphone placement is getting me today. I don't know why.
Oh, yeah, I don't have it scrolled up enough in my video to.
What do you mean scrolled up enough in your video?
Well,
It's right in the
whatever.
middle at the bottom center, where it's like RO.
Yeah. No, I meant in stream. Anyway,
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
I'm just gonna play.
In fact,
Oh, I
let
see
me
what you
make
mean.
something as clear as I possibly can. While I very much believed, and still believe, that there's a discussion to be had about the fairness of allowing women who have experienced male puberty to compete against women who haven't, Laurel is a woman. Period. Another major mistake that I made in relation to tone is my whole narrative. Many have pointed out that by me saying such things as,
And so here we have a very real example of a young, talented woman losing a potential scholarship and career due to this issue.
I painted a picture of trans women essentially stealing competitions from non-trans women.
Yes, that's the entire point of this conversation. Congratulations. Like, even talking about this issue in the way that you've talked about it, like, is like it doesn't matter if you bring up that specific example or not. Like, the way the entire if you take that clip out, you still made the same point as you did in that clip in your video.
Yeah.
Like, does he not recognize that? Like, even if he's like, I'm sorry I had this clip in there. If I took the Joe Rogan one out and then this next clip out, it would have been fine. No, no, it wouldn't have been.
And you're absolutely right. I really dropped the ball here, and I will do my utmost best not to make this mistake again. In fact, going forward, I'll be very conscious of my narrative and language altogether.
I have a strong feeling that the rest of this video contradicts that last statement.
Probably. Things go in one ear and out the other sometimes with stuff. I've only watched the breakdown, so
Right.
As such a sensitive topic requires nothing less. Truly, I should have known better.
Yeah.
Now,
My nerves
I'm going to
too.
move on to my intellectual mistakes, but before doing so, I feel it's necessary to first address the repugnant motive that people such as Ethel are incessantly ascribing to me.
What? Bro, no one's talked about your motives. Nobody.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm pretty sure Ethel from Essence of Thought has said repeatedly that she has no way of knowing, or they have no way of knowing, that whether or not you actually hold transphobic views, but that your commentary on this matter and your lack of apology on this matter has called into question her ability to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
That's it. And now this segment of the video is only going to further give me less ability to give you that benefit of the doubt.
As while I accept and truly appreciate many of Ethel's criticisms, I don't want to give the impression that I also accept the assertions of malice that she laces each and every with.
Oh dearie me, the ultralight man is here to teach us about his fears for women's sports. So what says he? What beckons the end of Stephen Woodford from Rationality Rules?
Whoa. Did he just cut that?
Is jumping on the anti-trans bandwagon. Because when the Bible thumpers are too busy to blame us for every natural disaster on this planet, the trademark skeptics step up to claim that we're destroying Western civilization, piece by piece.
My motive and position was never, as Ethel and others have asserted, to attack trans women and their, quote, place in public.
But you have. That's what the effect of your video is. I don't think trans women should have a place in sport. That's your video. At least alongside other non-trans women. That's been your point the whole fucking time.
Yeah.
As a means to attack trans women and their place in public.
And I certainly wasn't trying to, quote, cash in on a far-right paycheck.
Taking up the pussy hat at the whiff of a far-right paycheck amused me. Because Woodford's personal beliefs aside, that is who he caters to these days with his Soft on Shapiro videos.
What's more, I never said that trans women should be excluded from sports.
That's not true at all. Dude, that's the implication of your video. You can hide behind the fact that you didn't think. Dude, you just apologized for this really gross point of your video where you're like, non-trans women are being negatively impacted by trans women. The logical extension of that particular thought point is that trans women should be excluded from sport. Fuck you for running away from that.
Well, but you see, Xevaris, you see, if you just give everything to imply a position, clearly you haven't said it.
Dude, I'm so sick of this centrist bullshit. No, dude, no, fuck that. I can take your statements and then logically extend them. If you don't like the fact that I logically extend them, it's on you to point out where the extent of your statement ends. I'm sorry, it is.
Well, I mean,
you're like,
what?
I think this non-trans woman was negatively impacted by trans women, but I still think that trans woman should be allowed to compete against the non-trans woman. That's the only way I get away from not being able to extend your logic. But then that would remove the need for that story for you to have said it. There's no reason for you to say that anecdote unless your implication is, I think that the trans woman took something from the non-trans woman and therefore it shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
I'm a little triggered.
But it's okay. He's not really saying that.
Yeah, he didn't out and out say it, so you can't say I'm a transphobe.
Yeah, he's just now going to once again bring up incorrect facts.
If trans women are excluded from said sports, as he argues they should be,
I never called for the removal of
Bullshit.
trans rights.
and the way he used this to argue for the removal of their human rights, he was calling for the removal of trans people's human rights.
I didn't blur any critical information in my ACA video, and my views were never, ever based on any prejudice whatsoever against trans people.
Yeah, this isn't the point, you fuckwit. That's not the fucking point. The point is I don't care what you think. It's what you fucking said. What the fuck?
I like plot device manager. I'm not transphobic. I just don't know shit about trans folks. I tend to think it's a bit more willful ignorance at this point.
You know, what was it? The fucking thing that Essence of Thought was pointing out in their latest or their previous video was about how there's all the people online who are all like, fuck, what was it? Like, I think that trans women shouldn't be allowed in sport until we've researched the matter further, or some bullshit like that, where it's we need to gatekeep your rights behind study.
Yeah.
Yeah, fuck that.
Yeah.
It's the fact that Woodford made his video from a standpoint of prejudice against trans people. He, as a creator, was acting on transphobic principles. When he made it, he formed his argument from sheer prejudice for trans women, based on preconceived notions and stereotypes of what they're like.
My motive, my concern, was and still is what constitutes fairness in sport.
Yeah, exactly. The idea that it's unfair for women to compete against other women based on the fact that they're trans.
Yeah.
Like, he seems to not recognize this inability to cross these two gaps. But anyway.
Trans women must be able to compete, and indeed as the gender they identify as, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's fair for trans women to compete in the same category as non-trans women.
Oh my god.
It might be, for example, perfectly fair for those who transitioned before male puberty, but unfair for those who transitioned after. But we'll get to such details a little later. Now, in addition to defaming me, Ethel has been pretty much defaming anyone who won't publicly denounce me, including Matt Dillahunty, Aaron Ra, Thomas Westbrook, Telltale, Rachel Oates, and even Mr. Atheist, for crying out loud. But yeah, for now at least, I'm done with this Essence of Drama segment, and I'll just reinforce that while I don't accept the following lacings of malice, I wholeheartedly accept and appreciate the intellectual criticisms.
Woodford utilized a basic bait and switch. He invited us to discuss the counter that trans women on HRT don't have an advantage due to said HRT. That was what he advertised. He then went on to assert that many of said traits remain in spite of HRT. That's when the switch took place. Instead of referencing articles on the differences between cis women and trans women who have undergone HRT, Woodford goes on to roll out articles discussing the differences between cis women and cis men.
Now this was, in my opinion, my biggest intellectual blunder.
Dude, that's not a blunder. Like, I don't know how you blunder that. I'm talking about HRT trans women. Now I'm talking about cis men. That's a conscious decision.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's almost like it's almost like seeing trans women as men, some sort of transphobic position.
Oh yeah. Oh, he doesn't have those though.
No, definitely not.
At the time, after explaining some of the reasons as to why men have an athletic advantage over women, I intended to show that while HRT evidently sufficiently reduces many of these advantages, such as hematocrit, it hasn't been shown to sufficiently reduce many other advantages, such as height.
Hello? Yeah,
Hey.
we're reading the things on the screen right now, Pages of Dreams.
Yeah.
The stream didn't cut out. I'm just reading the really small text on screen. I think my biggest issue with this is that he's comparing. Is this about athletes or is this about trans women to standard women? And what athletes? This data isn't complete enough. I can already tell.
Uh,
Yeah, no. He's like, so look, at the top, he's like, by sufficient, I mean, quote, within the typical range of non-trans female athletes. But the studies that he's citing here aren't in relation to female trans athletes of the female variety or the trans female variety. These are just trans people versus cis people. This doesn't demonstrate your point. Female athletes exist outside the typical range of the female gender. Because male athletes do the same. Athletes, by any standard, are above normal human standards.
Yeah, it's almost like someone might bring that up in the next video that we watch.
Maybe I'm just as smart as Essence of Thought. You've heard it here.
I disagree.
Limb proportions, muscle fiber type, heart size, lung capacity, and muscle fiber. The problem, of course, is that I somehow failed to include the second part, and consequently, I damn messed up. I equivocated trans women with non-trans men, and that's a huge mistake that could have been fixed with just a paragraph or two.
That's a huge transphobic ass mistake. You don't get to be like, I think black people commit more crime than white people because I've compared weird crime statistics. And then not have anybody be like, yeah, dude, you were racist right there. Like, seriously. You can make racist statements and not be racist. That's what everybody's been asserting this entire time, dude. I feel like you're intellectually trying to avoid the fact that people have called your statements transphobic and not you transphobic.
Another of my intellectual mistakes refers to hemoglobin.
Did you get that, you unrehearsed emotional college students? Hemoglobin is the #1 advantage cis men have over cis women. Well, this is awkward. You see, this is what happens when you attempt a bait and switch, using studies comparing cis women to cis men, rather than cis women to trans women on HRT. You end up talking a load of pure bollocks about hemoglobin being the greatest source of trans woman advantage, only to then discover that hemoglobin counts of trans women are the same as those of cis women.
Indeed, my views on hemoglobin were mistaken. You see, I had read a few studies which compared the mean...
Sorry, just the way he's going through these is like, he's like, ha, yeah, you're right, you got me there. Ha, yeah, you're right, you got me there. Oh, by the way, I'm still right, though.
Yeah, I mean, like, these are just the aspects that Essence of Thought has categorically shown how wrong Rationality rules is.
Right.
Now he'll just like say shit or whatever, which we'll get to watch Essence of Thought, then also break down about how wrong he is about.
It's just messed up, man. He's clearly on some kind of like power trip here. Like, oh yeah, you got me there. It doesn't matter though. Like, that's how he said that.
Yeah.
Mean hemoglobin levels of trans women to non-trans women, which indeed are significantly higher. But what those studies didn't make clear, and what I now know, is that while the average trans woman on HRT has greater hemoglobin in their blood than the average non-trans woman, it's still within the typical range of the latter. In hindsight, I should have focused on the aforementioned athletic advantages of muscle mass, height, and muscle fiber type.
That we talked about how you're not actually describing between trans women athletes and women athletes, but okay.
As HRT doesn't bring these advantages down to the typical range.
There's also another trick at play here. By focusing on the typical range of testosterone whilst discussing national and international level sports, you are implicitly claiming that women at such sporting events as the Olympics are representative of the typical woman.
This is also a fair criticism. I should have emphasised that while female athletes have, with very few exceptions, testosterone levels within the typical range of non-athletes.
Sorry, I have to pause and read some freaking stuff.
Wait, what's the what's the number? Animals per liter.
I think he's talking about. Oh Jesus! The typical female range goes up to 2.43. Dude, athletes don't even set in that range. Jesus. With sprinters and the high athlete being 2.0. If this is correct, anyway.
They do tend to sit on the higher part of that range. Though, and this might surprise you, as it did me, the opposite is true of endurance athletes. Research shows that circulating levels of testosterone, or current levels of testosterone, vary significantly from one athletic event to another. In explosive events, such as sprinting, swimming, cycling, kayaking, and speed skating, test levels are on the high end of the female range. But in endurance events, such as long and middle distance running, test levels are on the low end. And that's one of the reasons why the scientific community frequently notes that circulating testosterone isn't the be-all and end-all. It seems that just as fast-twitch muscle fibers are critical in some sports but negligible in others, the same is true of circulating testosterone. It's evidently less what one's current levels are and more what one's previous elevated levels have given them. So there's the mistakes that I made, or at least the majority of them. I'm now going to move on to Ethel's mistakes, but don't let that dampen mine.
Oh, jeez. I'm now going to spend way longer talking about somebody else's mistakes and in far more detail than I was talking about mine. But don't let that diminish me talking about my mistakes, please. What the fuck?
Screwed up, and I own that fact. While I reject the malice motive that some have attributed to me, I absolutely recognise that my honest mistakes caused real harm, and I am sincerely sorry for that. The original video is now delisted, and I've donated all of the ad revenue that it made to the... I know that it will never make up for the harm that I've caused, and that many of you will never consider me an ally again. I understand. So the first of Ethel's objections that I'd like to respond to refers to the fact that trans women don't always win.
What's interesting about the Rachel McKinnon case is the fact that the person responsible for attacking her, Wagner Asali, who came third, beat McKinnon in 10 out of 12 previous events. And not only did Asali fail to raise issue during those times, but apparently those 10 times can be ignored since McKinnon won the 2018 UCI Track Championship. The implication here being that a trans woman competing isn't a problem, just so long as she never wins.
Ethel went on to make the same point about Laurel Hubbard.
Whilst Hubbard holds the snatch record, she does not hold the clean and jerk record or the total record for her category.
And also in regards to Hannah Mountsie.
Also, she's been on the losing team before, so it's not like her presence guarantees victory.
Now, the problem with this objection is that it completely misses the point.
No, that was your point. No,
yeah.
Wait, what? Wait, what?
It's called a
What?
bait and switch. It's called a bait and switch.
Dude, no! You can't make the fucking argument about, oh, this poor cis woman lost to a trans woman, and then be like, oh, that wasn't the point about trans women being unfair athletes and they win all the time. But, oh, fuck me for not realizing that trans women don't win all the fucking time.
That's a secret advantage.
Your entire argument hinges on it's unfair. So when I point out, trans women don't actually win all that often, you're like, oh, that's not the point, man. What the fuck?
Just right, we've just started him.
Dude, I don't... I don't know if I can watch this. Like, Jesus Christ.
If one has an unfair advantage but loses, they still had an unfair advantage. Fairness, which is the foundation of sports and athletics, is
LeBron James has an unfair advantage versus every other player. Like, I mean, who else is 6'8"?
Chamberlain had an advantage.
Oh my God, Wilt Chamberlain, 7'2", 300 pounds, faster than everybody, can jump higher than everybody. Oh, but he didn't have an advantage over Muggsy Bogues. I mean, they didn't play against each other because different eras. But Muggsy Bogues, 5'3". You're trying to tell me that this is fair? Like,
yeah, I mean, sports are inherently unfair. It's kind of.
we try to make them as fair as possible based on outcome.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's the deal. Like, so, like, it's only based on outcome. That's the only reason we separate things in sports. Like, trying to find a really good example off the top of my head, but I'm not pulling one off my ass.
Weight classes?
But yeah, weight classes are a really good example. But I mean, like, you're allowed to fight up a weight class.
Professional athletes have an unfair advantage over me in the Olympics. Fuck me.
Yeah, dude, no. Like, that's the other thing. It's like an Olympic athlete is not a normal range human by any metric. By zero metrics are those people like normal range humans.
Yeah.
But somehow we like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be all like fucking stereotypical, but has Rationality Rules ever actually played any sports? Like I don't know anything about him personally, but did he? I know he's from Britain. I don't know if they have high school, but in the same way that I know they have. I'm not trying to assert that Britons don't have high school level education. Talking about, like, I don't know if it's called high school over there or not, but we call it high school sports in the U.S. Did he play that level 16, 17, 18 sports? Does he understand what it's like when you go up against a Division I athlete? And you want to tell me that that's fucking fair? I led my team in sacks for my entire junior year of fucking high school. Played one Division I scholarship level player. I felt like I was playing against an adult.
Yeah.
So yeah, no.
I like Potify's finisher's point. But if they're trans, it's unfair.
No. All Division I level athletes in sport, anybody who's got a Division I scholarship lined up, they're no longer allowed to play in high school athletics anymore. It's just not fair. They have a genetic advantage over everybody else.
Yeah.
That's the argument you're fucking making.
Well, you need to break down everything and just have as much gatekeeping as you possibly can get away with.
Like, this also just, I don't know, man.
about who crosses the line first. It's about ensuring that all participants spring from the same starting block.
But they don't! Dude! So, oh my fucking God. Sorry, sports is a really big, touchy topic for me personally, all right, man?
Yeah.
So, like, the kid whose parents are poor and he couldn't have a pre-game meal is not starting in the same place as that other person is.
Yeah.
But we still call it fair.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't know. I can't even tell where we're at in the video.
We're at 11 minutes, 3 seconds of a 25-minute video.
I'm gonna have a fucking heart attack.
It's okay. We'll get to see Essence of Thought break it down.
Marathon against Mo Farah and was given a 30-minute advantage, he'd still easily beat me, but I'd still have had a significant unfair advantage.
No,
Hence,
you wouldn't.
The question is whether...
No, you wouldn't. That's the point about that. So, like, in football, right? So, you have different positions. Each position has a different job, and therefore they have different athletic ability and different athletic types. So
Yeah.
you have the fat linemen who are big because they have to be as big as strong as possible to protect the small guy in the back before he has a chance to throw the football, right? Then you have the guys on the outside who run as fast as possible, and they're not as big and as strong. Then you have the running back who's probably got a decent mix of both strength and speed, right? So
Yeah.
when the coach trains us, yes, the fat linemen get to start like a bit ahead of everybody else for the race because we're fat and slow. Compared to that fucking sprinter, you're fat and slow. It's not an unfair advantage for you to start 30 minutes ahead of him for it to be a competitive race, not a fair race. You keep doing this thing where you conflate fairness with competitiveness. There's a difference. Sports is not about fairness. It's about competitiveness. We like sports because they're competitive, whether or not they're fair. That's why we like basketball, because it doesn't matter that LeBron James has an advantage over everybody else, because it can still be competitive regardless of that fact.
Yeah. I mean, LeBron James has like a half a foot on Steph Curry, but Steph Curry does like...
Wins an MVP and 2 championships over him. It happens.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's a mixture of teamwork and just like their different skills with different usefulnesses. Yeah.
It's like we can even fucking get biblical. Like, the reason why we fucking like sports is David versus Goliath.
Yeah.
Like, is it fair for Goliath to fight David? Fuck no. But he got a sling. That didn't make it quote unquote fair, but it made it competitive.
Yeah.
And that's the thing we like about fucking human greatness is defined by the suffering you go through to get there.
Yeah.
Not the fairness as on your way up there. Sorry, I like sports too much.
No, that's fine.
Whether or not McKinnon, Hubbard, Mountsie, and other trans women who have experienced male puberty still retain any of the athletic advantages that they receive from said male puberty. And if they do, whether or not they constitute a too greater advantage in the specific events that they desire to compete in. At elite level athletics, in most events, the difference between first and second place is less than 1%. I'll say that again, as it's absolutely critical. In most events, the difference between first and second place is statistically less than 1%.
Now I know for a fact he never played high school sports. Now I know for, like, the fact that he thinks that this is some kind of, like, I don't know, like, jaw-dropping statistic. Dude, have you never heard the phrase, it's a game of inches? Every game is decided by a 1/10 of a second here, or a 1/10 of a second there, or 1 inch here, or 1 inch there. That's the point.
Yeah.
And so any retained advantages that are not mitigated by other disadvantages is simply too much.
No! This idea that sports has to be fair just fucking, it makes me want to be all conservative. I get like this fucking like this itch in the back of my spine, and it like reaches up to my base of my skull, and it like needs to explode outwards. Personal responsibility! Personal responsibility! Personal responsibility! Sorry. If you don't like that person is a 1/10 of a second faster than you, work harder. Sorry.
To quote Noel Plum, who recently released an absolutely brilliant video on this subject.
In sport, when it comes to performance enhancement, close enough is not close enough.
And this brings us comfortably to the burden of proof and where exactly it lies.
Woodford needs to do 3 things. First, he needs to show which of these traits survive the HRT process and to which degree. Second, he needs to demonstrate superior performance on part of trans women on HRT. 13 to demonstrate a causal relation leading from point 1 to point 2. Without that, he has nothing.
Actually, no. The burden of proof is on you, us, and here's why. Given that in most events, men outperform women by 10 to 15.
Oh my god. Wait. Please tell me he's not going to compare trans women to cis men again. Is that really what's about to happen right this second again? After he just got done apologizing for doing that?
I don't remember for sure, but yeah, it sounds like that's what's going to happen.
30%. We need to show that HRT completely removes, or at least sufficiently mitigates.
Oh
Also,
my fucking god.
He just fucking transphobed the fuck out of that, being like, you, me, the cis man, and just compared trans women to cis men right there.
Oh my fucking god, dude. No, you
We
don't
saw
understand. Like, dude, fuck no. You don't need to do this. The burden of proof is on the other side because as I said earlier, the measure of whether or not sports are good or not is based on the outcome. When trans woman loses races 10 out of 12 times, the burden of proof is on you to demonstrate she has an unfair advantage. I'm sorry, but that's how sports work. You don't get to be like, yeah, that person who loses all the time, we got to make sure they don't have an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
Advantages granted by male puberty. And until we do that, we are not justified in claiming that fairness has been achieved. Now, thanks to Joanna Harper, and this is another thing that
I just feel like this is my entire fucking, like, my point over and over and over again, is sports is not about fairness, it's about competitiveness. Sports has never been about fairness. If it was about fairness, we would make sure that every athlete had a perfect diet leading up to the race event, regardless of where they came from. It's not about fucking fairness. It's about competitiveness. There's a difference.
that I'll elaborate on within my upcoming video. I'm currently convinced that when it comes to long and middle distance running, the burden either has been met or it's close to being met, since in these events they rely very heavily on hemoglobin, and HRT does indeed lower hemoglobin to the appropriate level. But in other events, and especially those which pivot on such things as height...
I got a curious one, because I know that Essence of Thought brought up Castor Semenya. Does he ever talk about her in this? Because Castor Semenya is a woman, a cisgendered woman.
Yeah.
And has ranges of everything impressively far outside the norm. Should she not be allowed to compete?
Yeah, I mean the Essence of Thought goes into this a lot more, but the whole thing is, if you're setting up something to exclude trans women that also excludes cis women, it's a problem.
Yeah, you're not like the sports you're trying to set up. I don't want to watch.
Yeah, and
because at that point, so like let's take it to his perfect world where everything is fair. I don't want to watch sports if it's just luck based. Because that's what he's talking about. If everything is fair, the winner is selected by luck.
Yeah,
and I'm not. Also, yeah, no, I don't watch sports for luck.
Yeah, and also, yes, plot device manager. I don't think this guy cares at all. I don't think Rationality Rules cares about the quote-unquote unfair advantage cis dudes have over trans male athletes, because we don't see that advantage. It's almost like the advantage is all in Rationality Rules' mind.
Yeah, we don't need to make cis men be removed from male sports to better accommodate trans men.
Well, they need to take HRT to lower their testosterone to better.
But fuck that, dude. You know what needs to happen? Here's what needs to happen. The world needs to get over.
Rationality.
No, the world needs to get over the fact that everybody hates steroids, and all of our athletes just need to be on steroids and all the performance enhancing and drugs, and we'll have the best sports ever.
Yeah,
We'll just have a bunch of Wilt Chamberlains running around, okay?
Yeah, I'll sell everything.
Tell me you wouldn't watch that.
Well, I'm waiting for the cybernetics.
No, that's the future of sports. It's like heavily genetically modified humans versus the best robots we can make.
Well, I was thinking of like cybernetic enhancements where people are just like limbs replaced, and it's just like because it's whatever is programmed in, so it's whatever arm you can pay for.
You just want to go towards Alito Battle Angel, don't you?
Yes, I still need to see that movie.
It's like the premise of that movie.
Yeah, I know.
All right, let's get back to this game. I mean, shit.
Yeah, this is a fun game.
Let's see. The game is see how triggered Xevaris can get.
Yeah, exactly.
Frame and fast twitch muscle fibers, the burden not only hasn't been met, it's heavier than it's ever been before, which is to say that the evidence is overwhelmingly to the contrary. Again, I'll elucidate on this and the burden of proof in detail in the future, but I feel compelled to give the short of it now since it's certainly relevant. So, let's get to Ethel's next objection.
Miller beat Seoul by 0.37 seconds, yet Miller's own time was still 0.35 seconds slower than the current women's record, which stands at 6.65 seconds. Does that then mean that cis women have clear advantage over trans women?
This criticism, of course, relates to trans women not always winning, and it suffers from all the same flaws.
No, it doesn't suffer
No.
from any flaws. It's a direct It's a direct response to your bullshit claim that it's unfair.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be like they have an unfair advantage. Sure, they haven't beaten like a fucking single record, but like they definitely have an unfair advantage. I just can't explain what that advantage is.
The advantage is somehow in a place where it doesn't manifest as an advantage.
Yeah.
If one has an unfair advantage but loses, they still had an unfair advantage. Yes, due to HRT, Miller's testosterone is like...
I have to pause it for a second. That whole statement they keep bringing up is just so dumb.
Because
Just be like,
it's
you have an unfair. Sure, if you're constantly losing and you have an unfair advantage, you still have an unfair advantage. It's like, no, you don't really have an unfair advantage if you clearly don't have an advantage that's demonstrated by evidence. I mean, if there's no evidence for the advantage, why should I think that there is an advantage?
Yeah, it's resting on that idea of sports being fair, not competitive.
Yeah.
Sports are not fair. How many fucking times do I gotta say it? It is not fair.
Well, see,
If it was fair, I'd be playing professional sports right now.
see, Rationality Rules has like a wall that's built up inside his mind to just block out facts and reason.
likely now within the range of non-trans women, and because of this, some of the benefits that she received from male puberty are now mitigated, such as circulating hemoglobin. But other benefits haven't been, such as muscle mass. Now don't get me wrong, HRT reduces muscle mass by over half, but to
is not good enough. Cutting whole is what it has to be.
That is the dumbest.
That is fucking dumb. Holy shit.
Yeah, no. We need HRT to get rid of muscles completely. That's the only way that it not just cut in half.
Women have 100% less muscle mass than men.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
Also, like, did he like not spend a lot of time editing this video? This video has way harsher cuts than I remember any of his other videos. At least my YouTube videos have harsh cuts because I put them there on purpose.
Yeah,
I'm shit at editing.
Relative changes in muscle mass after 12-month cross-sex hormonal treatment in 19 male to female and 7 female to male transsexual subjects. Access before the means of XY before testosterone. Also, yeah. Now this is more just average trans women and average women things.
Yeah, this is just more of that bullshit where he's like, I'm comparing trans women to cis women instead of comparing trans women athletes to cis women athletes.
Yeah.
You need to go all the way or have some mitigating factors that will counteract it for it to count. But cut in half, it's not close enough. Close enough is never close enough when it comes to a performance advantage, an unfair performance advantage in sport.
Okay.
No. Oh my. How? Dude, I feel like I'm just killing this horse at this point. It's like
it's not dead enough.
We need to reduce LeBron James' muscle mass to match Steph Curry's muscle mass. We also need to surgically remove. We need to surgically remove 5 inches of height.
Yeah. 6 inches.
Yep, about 6 inches of height. Yep.
Yeah, I want to say Steph Curry's 6'3".
Yep.
So now I'd like to respond to the most frequent criticism that I've received. That being that trans women have been able to compete since 2004, and yet they haven't come to dominate. Ethel and many others see this as strong evidence for trans women not having an advantage whatsoever.
And to that end, I'd just like to note the fact that the Olympics has allowed trans women to compete since 2004. That's 15 years of trans women being allowed to compete at the Olympic level. And in spite of all of this, trans women have not come to dominate said games. Again, we have 15 years of trans women being allowed to compete in female categories at the Olympics. Yet we have absolutely no evidence of what you claim will happen unless we act quickly.
Yes, trans athletes have been able to compete since 2004, but up until 2015, and effectively 2016, the rules were drastically different. Until 2015, trans women had to 1. Be legally recognised as a woman.
So? That has no bearing on their athletic ability, you fuckwit!
Legal recognition.
That was like his first point. Like, first and foremost, they have to be legally recognized as their assigned sex.
Surgical anatomical changes have completed, including external genitalia changes and gonadectomy. Hormonal therapy appropriate for assigned sex has been administered and verifiable managed for a sufficient length of time to minimize gender-related advantages in sports competitions.
I'm pretty sure the first one and the second one are still those are still current Olympic
just wait. He'll bring up the current thing and we can read that.
Which, of course, was near impossible for those living in countries in which changing one's gender is illegal. 2, they had to have undergone gender reassignment surgery, which is to say they had to have removed their testicles. And 3, they had to have received appropriate hormone therapy for at least 2 years. Now, this might not sound like a huge change from today's rules of
Athlete has declaration can be changed for sporting purposes for a minimum of 4 years. The athlete has been below 10 nanomoles per liter for at least 12 months prior to competition, which, by the way, I'm pretty
That's
sure...
more strict than the previous guideline.
1 moment. Let me... quick so that I can...
Well, I mean, if I'm taking what he's saying as fact, the second one is more strict than the first one. The only way it's not more strict is by the legal representation of the country that you're in. Other than that, like the first one it's just like, hey, do hormone replacement therapy for 2 yeyears.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what your testosterone levels are. Just do that.
I need to check something real quick. So, 1 moment. Thing.
Those who transition from male to female are eligible to compete in the female category under the following conditions. I think that number 2, that bullet point there, those who transition from male to female are eligible to compete. Like, that's that first part of the first initial thing, right?
Sorry, what was that?
That where it says number 2, those who transition from male to female are eligible to compete in the female category. It says those who transition. That's what the first part is from the original ones, where it says surgical and anatomical changes.
Yeah. So the thing we need to bring up is, and I was just double checking to see if I had the numbers right, because I was pretty sure that the second part of this 2.2 is ridiculous and really is way too strict. So just to give you an idea, the average cis woman, the average testosterone level, total testosterone level is about 30 to 100
nanomoles per liter.
Oh wait, that's nanograms per deciliter.
Oh yeah, you got that wrong.
Yeah, no, I'm not as familiar with the nanomoles.
It doesn't really matter. I don't really care about that. I'm just pointing out that these are the exact same fucking requirements minus the legal recognition.
Well, also the hormone replacement therapy, it's just like it doesn't matter if there's gender confirming surgery. If the testosterone is that low, then for 12 months,
dude, my balls get in the way when I run, so like removing those is an advantage.
Well, yeah, I mean, I always thought that.
1, non-legally identifying as a woman, and 2, having testosterone levels below 10 nanomoles per litre for 12 months. But it is. While our adrenal glands produce a very small amount of testosterone, the vast majority comes from our gonads, that being the ovaries in women and testes in men. Hence, without testicles, a trans woman can't produce anywhere near the 10 nanomole limit, and will almost entirely depend on exogenous testosterone to maintain sufficient levels. However, with testicles, a trans woman can simply reduce her HRT as to allow her testosterone to be much closer to the 10 nanomole limit. Now you might be thinking, wait, Steve, why are you so certain that such manipulation is likely to occur? Well, that's my next topic.
Woodford seems to be taking it as a given that since these are the limits for sport, that most trans women in sport will aim to sit on the very edge or said limit. But how does that relate to reality? According to the guidelines put out by the International Planned Parenthood Federation, anti-androgens, also known as testosterone blockers, should be used to reduce the rates of testosterone in trans women's bodies to somewhere between 30 to 100 nanograms per deciliter, just above 3 nanomoles per litre, the typical range for a cis woman.
From here, Ethel goes on to cite recommendations from several other medical institutions to bolster her point.
None of which come anywhere near the 288 nanograms per deciliter, the 10 nanomoles per litre that Woodford is crying about.
And she concludes by reasoning that because of this, trans women are at a disadvantage in regards to testosterone.
In fact, many of these suggested targets cap trans women's testosterone levels at the lower end of a typical range for cis women. So if anyone is at a sporting disadvantage in regard to testosterone, it's most of trans women on HRT.
Now, to be honest, this objection is naive. The truth is that athletes have, and still do, sacrifice their health and safety in pursuit of their goals, as they know all too well that if they don't, they'll be outcompeted by those who do. Back when steroids were legal...
Okay. So he's going to say, like, this is bullshit. I know that athletes want to win, so I know that those trans women are doing that. I don't have any evidence, but come on, they're athletes. They've got to be doing that.
Yeah, and I mean, also just...
Even though the general science around transgender women would tell you that that would be really difficult to do, number one. But fucking Christ.
Well, also, you don't want like to. Part of the reason why you transition in the first place is to end up dealing with the hormonal changes over time. If you stop using if I were to stop using hormones for like 3 months, which is about how much time it would have to take for there to be any significant effect, um, yeah, it would be really things would get really uncomfortable. Most
Yep.
people don't want to do that.
And like today, not medically recommended, athletes happily admitted to taking them.
Steroids are taken 8 or 9, 10 weeks before a competition. It's not a healthy thing to do, but it's being used.
Oh my God.
I take.
Are you really talking about 1970s steroids?
Yes.
Are you a fucking idiot? All right. I am
well,
1000% convinced Stephen Woodford, Rationality Rules, has never played high level, even for like teenager level sports. Ever. He's never played anything that could be considered high level. Nothing.
Well,
he knows shit about sports.
Well, he knows shit about sports and he knows shit about facts.
He's the person all the jocks are angry about, because I'm one of those people who was a jock nerd, all right? I've been a nerd / geek my entire life, but I've also been a jock my entire life. I played high school sports. I was almost a D1 athlete. That almost happened before my knee injury. You do not get to talk about sports if you don't know fucking sports. Like, he's the nerd who's angry about the jocks making fun of all the shit that he likes because they don't know anything about it. He's doing the fucking same thing.
Yeah.
I took them, up until the competition, 8 or 9 weeks before competition, and it was something that everybody had to do in order to get an equal chance to compete.
And even when steroids were banned, athletes did, and still do, everything they can to pass drug screening, despite the fact that they know that getting caught will likely end their career. Another more recent example that comes to mind is MMA and the issue of testosterone.
He just keeps bringing up non-trans athletes to try and make his point that trans athletes would be trying to game the system to get as much testosterone as possible. We're just going to ignore the fact that his assertion here is that they're gaining the line as close as possible to that 10 nanomoles per liter thing. But we're ignoring the fact that 10 nanomoles per liter is still accepted. He's like, yeah, no, they're gaming the system, though. To what? To get to the maximum possible accepted limit? The fuck?
Testosterone replacement therapy. Long story short, institutions such as the UFC once allowed participants who had a prescription for TRT to compete. As a result, it has been suggested that participants took steroids to suppress their natural testosterone, and then, after their cycle, went to their very often success of being prescribed TRT. They didn't care about their health, they cared about winning. Why? Because they're athletes, and that's what athletes do. They do what it takes to win. The point is, athletes will, more often than not, operate at the very limits of what's permitted. And since the IOC, as of 2015, no longer requires trans women to undergo gender reassignment surgery to compete, and hence keep their testicles.
Is that the case, though?
Well, it doesn't matter. Like, so spironolactone gets rid of it's an anti-androgen. It gets rid of the testosterone. It doesn't matter that I have testes, but the total testosterone in my body is below the average woman.
Right.
So to be oh, it matters so much.
But it doesn't, because they're still testing below that 10 nanomoles per liter limit.
Yeah. And it's not like testes provide anything else special that's giving some sort of advantage. There's, you can't just be oh, testes produce a lot of testosterone, and then oh, it matters so much whether or not they get gender confirming surgery.
Right.
It's just what the hell? I mean, this is sort of the sort of shit where it's just archaic, backwards transgender stuff where they're just oh, to prove you're a woman, you need gender affirmation surgery.
Right.
That's the only point you'll be considered a woman. Thanks. Wisconsin.
Hovering at around 8 to 9 nanomoles per litre is an extremely viable advantage for trans women to
No,
utilise.
it's not.
In fact, this is one of the primary reasons that Joanna Harper, among many others, are campaigning to reduce the level to 5 nanomoles per litre.
I am part of a committee that has recently recommended that we lower that limit from 10 to 5.
Now, what's a little...
Sure, if you want to talk about lowering that limit, that might be potentially something we can talk about. But that's not what you're talking about. That's never been what he's been talking about from the outset.
Yeah, but also you have to verify that you're not kicking out cis women.
Right. Like, how many cis women have that high of testosterone?
Yeah. I can't remember.
Is that in other areas, Ethel seemingly accepts this competitive inevitability.
The Olympics and similar national and international level sports are not a children's gym class. They are the pinnacle of human capability. Nations are willing to pour millions of dollars into Olympic teams for the chance to win gold medals. And they'll do their research to figure out the easiest way to maximize that.
Indeed they will, and they know that hovering at 8 to 9 nanomoles provides trans women with a massive advantage.
No, it's not a massive advantage, you fucking idiot. If it was a massive advantage, it would fucking play out. You don't understand what a massive advantage is. A massive advantage demonstrates itself in results.
Yeah. A massive advantage is Wilt Chamberlain never getting tired and being 7'2", which is fucking ridiculous. That was a massive advantage.
LeBron James has a massive advantage.
Yeah.
He went to 8 straight NBA finals. That's what you see a massive advantage play out as.
Yeah.
In many events. The next objection I'd like to address relates to men typically having larger bodies than women.
But the presupposition that larger bodies benefits trans athletes is just that, a presupposition in need of evidence to back it up.
Yes, having a large body isn't an advantage in many events, such as equestrian and gymnastics, but in events such as weightlifting and hammer throw, to give just 2 examples, it very much is. In fact, the fact that men are on average taller and wider than women widely is recognised as one of the primary factors for the massive gap between them. And again, HRT doesn't sufficiently mitigate height and width. If Mountsie, for example, hadn't have experienced male puberty, she wouldn't be as tall and as wide as she is. Anyhow, the last objection I'm going to tackle is the most prominent study that Ethel referenced.
There is no direct and consistent research to suggest that transgender female individuals and transgender male individuals have an athletic advantage in sport, and therefore the majority of competitive sports policies are discriminatory against this population.
Indeed, this is the very study that many claim, including Dusty Smith, proves that trans women have no advantage.
Sports, medicine, trans. That's how easy this is to find. And, okay, boom, the very first link that comes up. The most basic amount of research you could possibly fucking do, right? So why did he not share the most in-depth scientific study with his audience on the subject he is talking about? Instead, why did he show a Joe Rogan clip instead of sharing the science? Well, in my opinion, it's because the most in-depth study that is done on the subject goes against his narrative, and he doesn't want you to know that.
Now, I'm going to thoroughly break down all of the relevant papers, including this one, in my future video. But to briefly
Not now.
Yeah, way to run away from it.
But now, let's go a step further than Dusty and do
The most basic amount of
reading. First off, if you read the title, you can see that it's a systemic review of the literature relating to sport participation and competitive sport policies.
Okay.
Which is to say, it's not a review of athletic performance. In fact,
what?
There's been no systematic review of the literature pertaining to sports participation or competitive sport policies in transgender people. Therefore, this review aimed to address this gap in the literature.
that the authors make even more clear in their objective. Scrolling down, if you read the method, you'll see that of the 8 studies that it references, 6 are interviews, with most having a sample size less than 5, and only 1 study actually relates to trans athletic performance, that being Goran and Bunk. And if you read their study, you'll see that, among other things, that while HRT significantly reduces muscle mass in trans women, it doesn't reduce it to anywhere near the same level as non-trans women.
But again, we're not talking about trans athletes, but okay.
Back to the systemic study, as from here things just get worse. The authors not only assert that
there is no direct and consistent research to suggest that transgender female individuals and transgender male individuals have an athletic advantage in sport,
but also that there's no direct or consistent research to suggest that they have any advantage at any stage of their transition, e.g., cross-sex hormones and gender-confirming surgery. I'll say that again.
Yeah, you're going to try to say that like you have some form of evidence that backs that up.
Competitive sports policies that place restrictions on transgender people need to be considered and potentially revised.
Right.
Any stage. Which is to say that if your position is that trans women should be able to compete so long as they're on HRT, then you ain't getting it from this review. But yeah, more on that to come. Okay, it's been a long one, and you're probably out of that tea, and so let's wrap up. There's been an absolute ton to cover, and while I've probably missed a thing here and there, I hope that at the very least, you, like me, have learned something.
Yeah, that you're a fucking idiot.
This topic is much more complicated than most, including my former self, are making it out to be, so please be wary of those who are still claiming that it's straightforward, because it isn't. Anyhow, I'll publish my views within a week or two, but until then, I highly, highly recommend that you check out the video from Noel Plum that I referenced earlier.
Yeah, I mean, this is clearly not going to say anything more.
Yeah, this was absolutely a dumpster fire. Rationality rules, you do not know shit about sports, first and foremost. You need to go play some sports at a decently high level. And if you have, and you still have these views, you need to go play again, because you don't fucking understand what sports are. Sports is never about fairness. Sports is entirely based around competition, and competition only. It is only when the competition is compromised that we make changes to sport. Unless you can demonstrate that there's a compromise to competition, not fairness, you do not have the ability nor any kind of prerogative to actually try and change sport. You don't. If you operate under this kind of assumption, LeBron James needs to take some form of muscle reducers. He needs to have surgical reducing of his height in order to make it fair.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that every high school athlete has a perfect diet before the competition. Otherwise, it's not fair. Because as you rightly pointed out, the guy whose parents can't afford to buy him a goddamn sandwich before the game is not starting off at the same place as the guy whose parents did. Sports isn't about fairness. Get it through your fucking skull.
So, get to refresh a little with essence of thought, breaking this down.
So the time has finally come to review Woodford's latest video on the subject of trans athletes. Now I'd just like to start by noting the facts that I won't be responding to Woodford's video and the arguments contained in the order he has presented them. Some points are more important than others to the degree of being foundational to the entire conversation, and therefore should be addressed first. Woodford also spends a great deal of time complaining about the fact that people held him accountable to his actions, claiming that this was assuming malice. And whilst I will cover that, the evidence is priority here. I've personally found his actions thus far to come off as disingenuous, therefore to start with the solid science seems the smart move.
I agree. He did come off so fucking disingenuous over the last hour. Dude, it took us like an hour and 20 minutes to cover that fucking video.
Yeah, it's a 25-minute video.
Dude, oh my fucking God. All right. Actually, before we get into this, can we take a quick stream break? I just need like a 2-minute break to go like get some water.
Sure.
I'm just gonna throw my "Be Right Back" screen. Hold on.
Because they're women. Shit, is this a toxic masculinity thing?
It might be. I'm back.
Oh, hi.
Yeah. Holy shit, dude. I don't know how like content creators do this. I seriously like lost my shit like 4 fucking times in the last video.
Well, I mean that's the entertain, or that's a type of content creation.
Whew. All right. Hopefully this is some I don't know, catharsis.
This is your mental cleanse.
I need one of those. What was that from Rick and Morty when they went to the spa place? They just let all the toxicity out of their bodies. I need that right now. That conservative side of my body like came out from inside of my spine. It came out, man. It's not okay. Gotta repress that shit. Hold it in. Hold it in. Ha ha ha! This is what happy sounds like. Ha 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 ha! All right, let's play this.
Yeah.
You can check my previous 3 videos produced in response to each of Woodford's videos for why I feel that way. In much the same way that my videos responding to religious content are produced on the basis that, in all likelihood, I won't convince the creator of that video that they're wrong, I must take the same approach here. First and foremost, I'm here to show the many faults in Woodford's updated video, because whilst it's being heralded as an improvement by many, the evidence disagrees. So let us start with the burden of proof on the subject.
And this brings us comfortably to the burden of proof and where exactly it lies.
Thank you for bringing this. Hold on. Thank you for Essence of Thought of making this the first part of your video. Because this is actually, like, as much as I'm triggered and would want to talk about the sports first and redefine for the entire audience how sports actually works and what sport is, because that's the part that I'm emotionally fucking attached to, the appropriate response is to talk about where the burden of proof lies first, definitely.
Yeah, well, Essence of Thought is, like, really amazing.
Not an irrational fucking triggered person like I am, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Basically.
Very, very, very good opening part.
Yeah.
First, he needs to show which of these traits survive the HRT process and to which degree. Second, he needs to demonstrate superior performance on part of trans women on HRT. Third, he needs to demonstrate a causal relation leading from point 1 to point 2. Without that, he has nothing.
Actually, no. The burden of proof is on you, us, and here's why. Given that in most events, men outperform women by...
Yeah, that you.
I
mean us. Yeah, you called that out when we watched it. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, no, I'm still triggered by that. It's just like basically calling Essence of Thought a man right there.
Mm-hmm.
10 to 30%. We need to show that HRT completely removes, or at least sufficiently mitigates, the athletic advantages granted by male puberty. And until we do that, we are not justified in claiming that fairness has been achieved. Now, thanks to Joanna Harper, and this is another thing that I'll elaborate on within my upcoming video, I'm currently convinced that when it comes to long and middle distance running, the burden either has been met or it's close to being met, since in these events they rely very heavily on hemoglobin, and HRT does indeed lower hemoglobin to the appropriate level. But in other events, and especially those which pivot on such things as height, frame, and fast-twitch muscle fibers, the burden not only hasn't been met, it's heavier than it's ever been before. which is to say that the evidence is overwhelmingly to the contrary. Again, I'll elucidate on this and the burden of proof in detail in the future, but I feel compelled to give...
Just this, I'll do this in the future. It's fine, not now.
I've got no evidence now. I've got these really great feelings, but, I can provide evidence in the future.
The short of it now, since it's certainly relevant.
Except this is entirely false. Not only were you the one calling for action on the basis of your unfounded assertions,
and I'm convinced that unless quickly rectified, this will kill women's sport. I don't want to see the day when women's athletics is dominated by Y chromosomes, but without a change in policy, that is precisely what's going to happen.
See, it's like he forgot he said that in his original video. Like, that right there is that thing we were talking about the entire fucking time. Like, you don't get to make this statement when trans athletes have been competing for a decade now, and they don't dominate shit.
More than a decade. If it was 2004, that would be 15 years.
But this is my point, is like, you don't get to make these wild-ass assertions. Ugh.
But what about Rationality rules his feelings?
But his feels. But the feels. I need a meme in my chat for feels. Is it just the Bible thump one? Is this the crying face?
Well, I mean, once you hit affiliate status, you'll be able to add emotes.
We'll need to...
Custom emotes.
We need a facts versus feels emote.
Oh, yeah.
Facts don't care about your feelings emote. All right.
But it also fails to take into account the facts that said actions would be in direct violation of numerous human rights belonging to trans women. This is something I started with in my original response and, rather disturbingly, has been missing from every video on the subject you have done.
Wow.
Including this one. The point is simple. When it comes to making ethical decisions, which this very much is, one should always default to the position with the least potential to cause harm. On one hand, we have the active violation of numerous human rights of trans women. On the other, we have...
nothing.
Well, you along with everyone else has failed to demonstrate anything on that level. About the worst thing I've seen are claims that records would become oversaturated with trans women. But here's the important thing to remember. Records are just that. Records. They can always be reverted if it's ever shown that trans women do in fact possess some unfair advantage and should be barred from competing with cis women.
There's a reason why. Like, we do this in U.S. sports. I mean, let's just...
Well, we did this we did that to the cyclist.
Well, I'm not even talking about in like a legitimate sense. So, like, talking about the NBA, like, history discounts everything that happened prior to like 1970 something. The rules were different. So obviously, yes, things need to be taken into account differently. We don't look at Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game and be like, yeah, that's the NBA record. No, most people look at it like, well, Kobe Bryant scored 81 in current today basketball, and most people consider that to be like a greater feat than Wilt's 100. Like, it doesn't even have to happen in an official capacity. It already happens in actual sports culturally.
Yeah.
Whether as a whole or in specific categories. Isn't that typically what happens when someone is found to be cheating? Which, by the way, is what you are suggesting trans women are doing.
Yep.
But you're a long way from showing that. Much like supporting the claim of a divine Jesus, Woodford has to make his way through several tiers of evidence. Key traits need to be shown to survive HRT. Those traits as a collective need to be shown to give an advantage. That advantage needs to be shown to be unfair. And all of this needs to be done before we can even begin to suggest that trans women are a threat to women's sport. You also should have noted that the reason you know about the Harper study is because it was reference 28 in my original video. Now, I don't care about receiving credit, but I do care about the way you are presenting me. I didn't simply state that the burden of proof was on you as a cheap tactic as we're very familiar with when it comes to religious apologists. I still went out of my way to find all the relevant research on the matter I could and discussed it, because that was the honest thing to do. On the other hand, what's not honest is claiming that the burden of proof on other events is heavier than it's ever been before. This insinuates that you have evidence to the contrary in relation to those events, whilst failing to supply it. And that's one of the main things a lot of people miss about the whole it's a subject needing discussion. We're more than happy to talk about the topic, but until we have evidence to show an unfair advantage, all discussion on said lines is purely speculative.
Yep.
Therefore, any calls to action on the basis of said speculation are not only without merit, but potentially harmful, especially when subtext, like that Woodford just used, enters the picture. Now that the burden of proof is out of the way, let's move on to what Woodford admits he got wrong, since I have a few things to add to what he says. I also feel it better frames the rest of what he then goes on to claim are the mistakes I made.
And I'll just reinforce that while I don't accept the following lacings of malice, I wholeheartedly accept and appreciate the intellectual criticisms.
Woodford utilised a basic bait and switch. He invited us to discuss the counter that trans women on HRT don't have an advantage due to said HRT. That was what he advertised. He then went on to assert that many of said traits remain in spite of HRT. That's when the switch took place. Instead of referencing articles on the differences between cis women and trans women who have undergone HRT, Woodford goes on to roll out articles discussing the differences between cis women and cis men.
Now this was, in my opinion, my biggest intellectual blunder. At the time, after...
Yeah, as we discussed earlier, this is not a blunder. This to be. This is some form of like he did it on purpose. I don't know for the malice reasons, but there's no reason. There's no good reason that that's a blunder. That's a purposeful decision.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where. Well, I mean, it's like I don't get the impression. Sorry, I get the impression that what rationality rules does. I mean, based on, I don't think I've watched rationality rules outside of this debacle, or maybe I have, and I just don't remember. But I get the impression that he has a viewpoint, and he looks for whatever evidence he can find to support that viewpoint.
Yeah, it's not a blunder. That's
and tries to
that's
find
a
as
conscious
much,
decision.
Or tries to cherry pick, and that's not. That's not how trying to discover honest truth works.
Yep.
After explaining some of the reasons as to why men have an athletic advantage over women, I intended to show that while HRT evidently sufficiently reduces many of these advantages, such as hematocrit, it hasn't been shown to sufficiently reduce many other advantages, such as height, width, limb proportions, muscle fiber type, heart size, lung capacity, and muscle fiber. The problem, of course, is that I somehow failed to include the second part, and consequently, yeah, I damn messed up. I equivocated trans women with non-trans men, and that's a huge mistake that could have been fixed with just a paragraph or two. Another of my intellectual mistakes refers to hemoglobin.
Did you get that, you unrehearsed emotional college students? Hemoglobin is the #1 advantage cis men have over cis women. Well, this is awkward. You see, this is what happens when you attempt a bait and switch, using studies comparing cis women to cis men, rather than cis women to trans women on HRT. You end up talking a load of pure bollocks about hemoglobin being the greatest source of trans woman advantage, only to then discover that hemoglobin counts of trans women are the same as those of cis women.
Indeed, my views on hemoglobin were mistaken. You see, I had read a few studies which compared the mean hemoglobin levels of trans women to non-trans women, which indeed are significantly higher. But what those studies didn't make clear, and what I now know, is that while the average trans woman on HRT has greater hemoglobin in their blood than the average non-trans woman, it's still within the typical range of the latter. In hindsight, I should have focused on the aforementioned athletic advantages of muscle mass, height, and muscle fiber type, as HRT doesn't bring these advantages down to the typical range.
Which is funny since you made the exact same mistake just now, as I will discuss in a second. But first of all, I have to draw attention to the text you had pop up on screen, which stated, quote, "By sufficient, I mean within the typical range of non-trans female athletes," end quote. Thing is, what do you mean by typical range? Do you mean within the range of every cis athlete ever? Do you mean so many standard deviations from the average or mean? It's kind of an important question since it'll impact our conclusion. As a guiding tool, I'd like to propose a simple principle. If your argument against trans women's participation in sport can be used to bar cis women, said argument is inherently flawed and should be
Yeah, I maybe repeated that a lot earlier today because I watched this.
Yeah, I agree with that though. Like, if your standard somehow like removes cis women, it's a bullshit and dumb standard.
Yeah, I mean, like you, and also the fact that there isn't any. It's one of those things where you can't just go around spouting, "Oh, significant advantage, it's significant advantage." Sure, there's no actual evidence for there being a significant advantage. I just feel like there's a significant advantage.
Right. Facts over feels.
Yeah.
Oh shit! Hold on.
discard.
Oh.
Something came unplugged.
Oh, okay. Just tell me when you're ready.
Well, I'm just going below my desk real quick.
You're not doing anything inappropriate.
Well, that was the joke.
Oh, okay. Are you ready?
So, all right, I'm good to go now.
Okay.
So if your arguments would exclude cis women athletes such as Margot Diak, who is a 2.18 meter basketball player, you will likely need a new argument. So with that sorted, let's carry on to what else you showed on screen, namely this figure from transsexuals and competitive sports. The top bar highlighted is one of trans women on HRT, and the bottom bar highlighted is of pre-HRT trans men. The pre-HRT trans men have been taken as a substitute for cis women, which I'm fine with doing.
Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't read that figure correctly, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's easy to miss. I missed it, like, going back. I knew that Essence of Thought, like, did more of a breakdown, but yeah.
But I just want to note that fact clearly. When I talk about the range of cis women, I'm using the range of pre-HRT trans men as a guide in the same way that Woodford is doing. Now what's interesting is the part Woodford has chosen to highlight, namely the circle in the middle and the two whiskers extending from the sides. Though one can't deny, it is visually striking. The difference is very distinct, it's very bold. Thing is, this is not the range for either group. This is. So, in the exact same fashion as your hemoglobin mistake, you once again confused mean, this time with standard deviation,
Damn.
with range.
Holy shit. Damn.
Yeah, no, this is... Essence of
Bro.
is just, like, amazing with their breakdown of...
Whoa, my dude, I made that mistake while watching his video. But, like, if I was trying to make this point, there's no way in hell I would have made that fucking mistake. Are you fucking kidding me? You're like, oh, look at that. Trans women, slightly ahead, but mostly within the same range. Oh, my God.
Of the trans women on HRT fit inside the range of pre-HRT trans men, a range we both agree will be the same for cis women. So focusing on this wouldn't have helped you. And before you claim this wasn't made clear to you, I suggest you read that figure annotation you repeatedly displayed on screen as you put the figure up.
Ooh.
You, my friend, went full Sargon of Akkad.
Damn.
Impressive, though disturbing.
Damn. Dude, you can't read a graph the same way Sargon can't read a graph. Oh, shit.
Yeah, no.
Damn.
Yeah, no, it's great.
And this is the second time you've made that mistake. Well, I guess we'll have to wait another couple of months for a clarification video. Now, some may say that trans women should be excluded since they're still outside the standard deviation for cis women. But here's the problem. so are all these people, and by proxy the portion of cis women they represent. So if you're going to exclude trans women on that basis, you also have to exclude these women on that basis, or you're just unfairly discriminating.
Right.
So it fails the test on that level. But it gets worse. You see, the study carried out a linear regression model on the relationship between height and muscle area, and what they found was that when it comes to muscle area, the biggest determining factor was the participant's height, even when they corrected for chromosomes with a multivariate model. The researchers concluded that the main ethical consideration when it comes to the participation of trans female athletes as it pertains to muscle area was height. And on that note, I'd just like to give a big thank you to scientist Sam for helping me understand what was being stated here. And it's true, trans women are on average taller, but as shown through the earlier point on Margot Dyack, trans women do not have some monopoly on height. Another fact to consider is that most strength sports such as weightlifting and combat sports already account for height.
Yep.
They do so by having weighted categories. As size increases, so does one's weight. Fact is, none of what Woodford supplies, accurate or not, heavy on the knot, even begins to address the subject of advantages like the study I supplied on runners did. As noted in my original video, listing traits which don't change or fail to match up to cis women isn't enough. Physiological traits are not simply a cumulative or linear equation when it comes to ability. Their relationship to one another is dynamic. For example, height and bone density, which was an advantage when present with the appropriate muscle mass, can become a disadvantage if only that muscle mass changes.
Yeah.
This is because less muscle is moving a greater total mass.
Yep.
That's why it's necessary for you to not only show which traits remain and to what degree, but to show an active advantage resulting from...
Yeah, and this is one of those things that Essence of Thought brings up that's just like, yeah, no, that's a good point about, like, just that is a clear disadvantage.
Right. But it, like, but it doesn't necessarily, like, so this is what I was talking about, like, with advantages only being relevant if they actually impact outcomes. Disadvantages too are only relevant if they impact outcomes. This isn't one of those disadvantages that impacts outcomes to such a large degree that we need to correct for it. Similarly, the testosterone thing is not such a large enough advantage that it requires a correction either. So, like, on both points he fails here. But also this point that Essence of Thought is currently making, because I think Essence of Thought agrees, if I were to ask, would probably agree that sport isn't about fairness, it's about competition, because that's the point that they're currently making.
Yeah.
From said traits. In my original video, I acknowledged that not every trait changed or did so to levels equatable to cis women, and that in no way harms my case, as I've just demonstrated. So please don't make the mistake of thinking otherwise. And with all that addressed, do continue. There's also another trick at play here. By focusing on the typical range of testosterone whilst discussing national and international level sports, you are implicitly claiming that women at such sporting events as the Olympics are representative of the typical woman.
This is also a fair criticism. I should have emphasised that while female athletes have, with very few exceptions, testosterone levels within the typical range of non-athletes, they do tend to sit on the higher part of that range. Though, and this might surprise you, as it did me, the opposite is true of endurance athletes. Research shows that circulating levels of testosterone, or current levels of testosterone, vary significantly from one athletic event to another. In explosive events, such as sprinting, swimming, cycling, kayaking, and speed skating, test levels are on the high end of the female range. But in endurance events, such as long and middle distance running, test levels are on the low end. And that's one of the reasons why the scientific community frequently notes that circulating testosterone isn't the be-all and end-all. It seems that just as fast-twitch muscle fibers are critical in some sports but negligible in others, the same is true of circulating testosterone. It's evidently less what one's current levels are and more what one's previous elevated levels have given them.
You know, I'm currently waiting for verification on fast-twitch muscle fibers. This is like others have also thrown at me as apparent evidence of an advantage. Thing is, they're often mentioned, but never referenced.
Right.
I did have someone attempt to do so back when this whole thing started. Only problem is the two studies were invalid. The first didn't have anything to do with anti-androgens, and the second was a mouse study. And can I just say, I scrolled through the entire month of May on Twitter just to find those references. They come from a conversation I had at the very end of April, but I had read those studies, so by damn, I'm going to reference them. Now, Woodford certainly didn't offer any valid reference in the description of his video, so what gives? Why keep mentioning fast-twitch muscle fibers unless you have something to go on?
So there's the mistake.
That's a really valid point.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep referencing this thing that sounds scientific enough that I can say something about it.
But I heard from a friend of a friend that that genetically people can end up with more fast twitch muscle fibers.
No, that's probably the case. Like we don't have like at least I don't think anybody really has like access to like top tier athlete muscle what's the word I'm looking for? Composition. So like we do have different like grades of muscle fiber. They do different things. And theoretically, you could have more of a better kind of muscle fiber that's more efficient and stronger and better for whatever kind of like athletic event that you're doing. But
yeah, but that everything I've seen has never put that to as much to gender as
right.
it is to just like some random genetic factor.
Correct. And like that was the point I was going to make, is that
okay.
I've never seen any study that talks about the type of muscle fibers that transitioning provides or doesn't provide.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly, I didn't know much of a difference, but to be fair, I was never in like very good shape, so.
I mean, you can get all pseudoscientific about it. I mean, did Rationality Rules watch Kenichi, the Strongest Disciple? Because they talk about the different muscle grades in that show too. Because it's the guy, he's like, I spent all this time training my body to have this one specific muscle type.
Oh god, that's so like totally wrong too. No,
it's built off of like some form of science, and then they make it fucked up and weird.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things where they're talking about like a particular muscle type, but it's also like the biggest of the muscle types,
right?
So they would be like way more jacked,
right?
Mistakes that I made, or at least the majority of them. I'm now going to move on to Ethel's mistakes, but don't let that dampen mine. I screwed up, and I own that fact. While I reject the malice motive,
he doesn't own that fact.
I was gonna, but like, not only does he not, he doesn't own that fact because he just spent like the first half of this video of his video, or even less than half the video, just like explaining, rationalizing. Oh, maybe that's why he's rationality rules. He rationalizes all his positions regardless of how wrong they are. Yeah, no, he doesn't own a goddamn thing.
Nope.
Absolutely recognize that my honest mistakes caused real harm, and I am sincerely sorry for that. The original video is now delisted, and I've donated all of the ad revenue that it made to the transgender charity Sparkle. I know that it will never make up for the harm that I've caused, and that many of you will never consider me an ally again. I understand.
I didn't realize we consider you an ally to begin with.
Damn.
I thought we just kind of saw you as sort of neutral. Also, it's not so much the malice behind your video. I mean, I said I hoped I was wrong and would like you to prove it. Then within 2 days of me posting, we reached an uneasy truce. It wasn't your initial words that made me think you were disingenuous, it was your subsequent actions when you were informed of this. And there's a very big difference between the two. Now, I've already been over the actions you have taken in my previous video, so I'll leave this point here.
So the first of Ethel's objections that I'd like to respond to refers to the fact that trans women don't always win.
What's interesting about the Rachel McKinnon case is the fact that the person responsible for attacking her, Wagner Asali, who came third, beat McKinnon in 10 out of 12 previous events. And not only did Asali fail to raise issue during those times, but apparently those 10 times can be ignored since McKinnon won the 2018 UCI Track Championship. The implication here being that a trans woman competing isn't a problem, just so long as she never wins.
Ethel went on to make the same point about Laurel Hubbard.
Whilst Hubbard holds the snatch record, she does not hold the clean and jerk record or the total record for her category.
And also in regards to Hannah Mountsie.
Also, she's been on the losing team before, so it's not like her presence guarantees victory.
Now, the problem with this objection is that it completely misses the point. If one has an unfair advantage but loses, they still had an unfair advantage.
Dude, I want to beat this horse more.
What? Because
he doesn't fucking understand sports not about fairness. It's about competition.
Yeah, but I mean, also, like, if you... It's like, oh, this person loses most of the games. That's an unfair advantage. They have an unfair advantage. Sure, none of that supposed advantage has helped them win or make any records, but they have it. I just
feel it. Where's my facts over feels crew in chat? I need my feels over facts rather. We need feels over facts. Feels.
Well,
give me all the feels.
Fairness, which is the foundation of sports and athletics, isn't about who crosses the line first. It's about ensuring that all participants spring from the same starting block. If I ran a marathon against Mo Farah and was given a 30-minute advantage, he'd still easily beat me, but I'd still have had a significant unfair advantage. Hence, the question is whether or not McKinnon, Hubbard, Mountsie, and other trans women who have experienced male puberty still retain any of the athletic advantages that they receive from said male puberty. And if they do, whether or not they constitute a too greater advantage in the specific events that they desire to compete in. At elite level athletics, in most events, the difference between first and second place is less than 1%. I'll say that again.
It still boggles my mind that he thinks that this is fucking like the most insane point. I can't believe sports is determined by 1%. Oh my God. I can't believe competition is really high in the thing that we want high competition in. Oh my God. I can't. Oh my God. Oh my God. Sports are sports. Sorry.
Again, as is absolutely critical. In most events, the difference between first and second place is statistically less than 1%.
Wait, yes. Raw fear me. You are fucking right. I didn't even think about it till right now. The problem is his awful fucking beard. Either grow it out or shave it. Come on, make a decision. You made a decision on your hair. Your hair is grown out. Make a decision on the beard.
And so any retained advantages that are not mitigated by other disadvantages is simply too much. To quote Noel Plum, who recently released an absolutely brilliant video on this subject.
In sport, when it comes to performance enhancement, close enough is not close enough.
Now the problem with your response is that it completely misses the point. This was a response to the availability heuristic, also known as availability bias, that you were relying upon. All of the names were cases you listed as examples where a trans woman had won, the media had caught wind of this and had made a national or even international story out of it. You use these few wins as evidence as to why you believe trans women were destroying women's sports. That is the only reason I ever responded on said anecdotes, because they were your anecdotes and ignored the vast majority of times where trans women lose. The same thing happens with air travel. People tend to remember the stories about plane crashes, but forget all the millions of safe landings that take place. That's your bias, not mine. I'm fine with not talking about said cases, so long as you stop bringing them up. It's very dishonest of you to try and pan off your problems onto me. Also, what I said on Rachel McKinnon does stand. In the 11 times she was beaten by Jen Wagner Silly, nothing was said about her as of yet mythic advantage, which you claim still existed. It was only once McKinnon won a high-profile race did it suddenly become an issue. This not only shows a selective outrage, but completely diminishes the hard-earned achievements of people like McKinnon who slave to get where they are. As for Noel, the show continues.
So, let's...
That was a really solid point, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, oh, winning 1 out of 12 races is not an advantage. Like, statistically, that's not an advantage. There's nothing to suggest there's an advantage.
Yeah, no, this is again, beating that fucking dead horse I've been beating for like 2 hours now. Sports is not about fairness. I really just want to go talk to him and be like, hey, dude, we don't define sports based on what's fair. It's about what's competitive, because fairness isn't fun to watch, because you might as well just flip a coin because it's the same amount of fun. David versus Goliath was awesome because it was competitive, not because it was fair. We can continue.
Let's get to Ethel's next objection.
That was the lightest I've beat that horse in the last 2 hours. I just want to point that out.
Yeah.
Miller beat Soul by 0.37 seconds, yet Miller's own time was still 0.35 seconds slower than the current women's record, which stands at 6.65 seconds. Does that then mean that cis women have clear advantage over trans women?
This criticism, of course, relates to trans women not always winning, and it suffers from all the same.
Actually, I forgot to bring up the point about the fact that no, it's not about trans women not always winning. If you have cis women having the record, then clearly trans women have not beaten that record, which means no trans woman is the best person in the category is a cis woman.
Yeah, that's actually a great way to look at it. I mean, if you're pretending to be rationality rules, but in reverse, the argument can be used the same way. Oh my God, look how unfair sports are to trans women. Look how often they don't win. Look how many dreams of trans women athletes are completely ruined because they're not as good as cis women.
Yeah.
Like, you can make the same reverse argument using the same exact logical points.
Well, yeah. Well, especially because rationality rules doesn't bring up any facts.
It's all about them feels. Where's my feels crew? Hey, my feels crew in chat. Feels. Where's the feels? I need them all. Give me the crying feels. And I'm sorry, Raw Fear Me. There will be no Nightbot. I don't know why. I can't get Nightbot to work. It just doesn't want to work.
You have to make it a moderator.
I did.
Oh, and it still doesn't. I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know then.
Like, the dashboard shows me who's my top chatters and stuff, but it doesn't tell me like anything. It's not working.
I don't know.
All right, let's get back to this though.
Same flaws. If one has an unfair advantage but loses, they still had an unfair advantage.
Hold on a second. Nightbot suddenly randomly started working and it like banned Raw Fear Me. What the fuck? I'm so sorry. He just came out of fucking nowhere. What the fuck?
Yeah, no, you definitely need to make sure the default emote spam setting is
I took it off.
Emotes. Oh, okay, you just like turned it off. I put I just raised.
I don't care as much about the chat bullshit, so like people do whatever the fuck they want in my chat. I don't care.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I've had like trolls on
no, you got more trolls than I
streams
do.
in 2 weeks. So, yeah.
He should stop banning you from chat, Rarfirmy.
I did have some Nightbot problem. I've had to modify Nightbot like a few times.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's a work in progress.
That's why I have moderators is
Oh,
to ban my
Wait,
racist traitors.
Was that a troll Flood Device Manager, or was that just like a conservative Christian? I can't tell the difference.
So, like we were just talking about, I don't know where Nightbot is. Bans Rarfirmy for 5 seconds. There it is.
Oh, okay.
All right, my bad on that though. Oh man, that was funny. All right, let's get back to this.
Testosterone is likely now within the range of non-trans women, and because of this, some of the benefits that she received from male puberty are now mitigated, such as circulating hemoglobin. But other benefits haven't been, such as muscle mass. Now don't get me wrong, HRT reduces muscle mass by over half, but to again quote Null,
cutting half is not good enough. Cutting whole is what
cutting whole.
You need to go all the way, or have some mitigating factors that will counteract it.
Because again, women have 100% less muscle mass than men.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's insane. I don't even know how they walk, but they do it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how Carly moves around.
No, women are just biologically different than men, such that they don't have muscle. They have something that we define as not muscle. It looks just like muscle, but it's not.
Oh yeah.
It works just like muscle. Like I promise you, if you put it under a microscope, it'll look just like muscle, but it's not. It's not muscle.
For it to count, but cut in half, it's not close enough. Close enough is never close enough when it comes to a performance advantage, an unfair performance advantage in sport.
Right, except both yourself and Noel have failed to demonstrate an advantage. Harold, you failed to show the muscle mass of trans women post-HRT is above that of cis women, because neither of you could be bothered to read a figure annotation. So this is just Noel's incessant whining followed by your equally ignorant stamp of approval. Now, just a quick warning, the next section is quite long.
Okay, so now I'd like to respond to the most frequent criticism that I've received. That being that trans women have been able to compete since 2004, and yet they haven't come to dominate. Ethel and many others see this as strong evidence for trans women not having an advantage whatsoever.
And to that end, I'd just like to know the fact...
Sorry. I have confirmation. Rarfirmy tells me that as a woman, she is 100% fluff. Nothing else. There is no muscle there. Just fluff. That's why women are so soft. They're literally just made of fluff.
Okay. That explains why I'm only like twice as soft as I used to be. Because hormone replacement therapy only
oh my god,
changes that by like 50%.
So it's just easier than you thought, Alex. That all you need to go to get transition surgery is just to show up at Build-A-Bear Workshop. They have all the fluff.
That's not gonna help the other part.
Build a Woman Workshop.
Oh god.
I'm sorry. I don't think we have not criticized the Rationality Rules beard enough for Rarfirmy. I guess it's that distracting to her.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it should be distracting to you, like the shape of the beard.
That was a really bad pun.
Facts that the Olympics has allowed trans women to compete since 2004. That's 15 years of trans women being allowed to compete at the Olympic level. And in spite of all of this, trans women have not come to dominate said games. Again, we have 15 years of trans women being allowed to compete in female categories at the Olympics. Yet we have absolutely no evidence of what you claim will happen unless we act quickly.
Yes, trans athletes have been able to compete since 2004, but up until 2015 and effectively 2016, the rules were drastically different. Until 2015, trans women had to, one, be legally recognised as a woman, which, of course, was near impossible for those living in countries in which changing one's gender is illegal. Two, they had to...
I still hate this. This goddamn argument.
Yeah, this argument is so bad.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, they made the rules stricter, but somehow he Rationality rules positions everything like it's less strict.
He's like, things have gotten stricter, and he's like, we used to not require things, and now we require things, and that's so much less strict.
Well, it's one of those things where he's like, oh, exact numbers of the amount of testosterone in the body, that's not more strict than gender affirmation surgery. And it's like, no.
Yes, Rarfirme, all the trans women that we're talking about in question that would be in Olympic competition will have been completing hormone therapy. If you see there's my freaking camera in the way, I guess you can't read it, unless now you can read it, where it says hormone therapy appropriate for the assigned sex has been administered in a verifiable manner for a sufficient length of time to minimize gender-related advantages in sports competitions. It was that was the old the old rules that were up until 2016 for the Olympics, and then he's about to put in the new ones.
Yeah.
To have undergone gender reassignment surgery, which is to say they had to have removed their testicles. And 3, they had to have received appropriate hormone therapy for at least 2 years. Now, this might not sound like a huge change from today's rules of 1, non-legally identifying as a woman, and 2, having testosterone levels below 10 nanomoles per litre for 12 months, but it is. While our adrenal glands produce a...
Yeah, that should answer your next question, as per rules or not. They're tested for hormone replacement therapy, as all athletes are basically drug tested and
yeah, I mean they're all tested about testosterone levels to make sure they're not juicing up with
also just performance enhancing drugs, steroids.
Yeah.
It's a very small amount of testosterone. The vast majority comes from our gonads, that being the ovaries in women and testes in men. Hence, without testicles, a trans woman can't produce anywhere near the 10 nanomole limit and will almost entirely depend on exogenous testosterone to maintain sufficient levels. However, with testicles, a trans woman can simply reduce her...
Wait.
You try to rewind it?
Yeah.
Small amount of testosterone. The vast majority comes from our gonads, that being the ovaries in women and testes in men. Hence, without testicles, a trans woman can't produce anywhere near.
That is unless
she has an extremely rare condition.
So, I don't know if he's referencing congenital adrenal hyperplasty there. That's when the adrenal gland produces an excessive amount of testosterone, enough to cause male characteristics in cis women. But, they end up like intersex by that. I mean, that's an intersex condition, but to be fair, they're still like whatever the doctor decided they are.
You don't even have to screenshot it. Like, it does kind of look like a mugshot with the background. Like, all you need to do is edit in like fucking like a height range right next to him, and it looks like a mugshot.
Oh my god, yeah, it does.
10 nanomole limit, and will almost entirely depend on exogenous testosterone to maintain sufficient levels. However, with testicles, a trans woman can simply reduce her HRT as to allow her testosterone to be much closer to the 10 nanomole limit. Now you might be thinking, wait, Steve, why are you so certain that such manipulation is likely to occur?
Well, see, this is the other thing that I want to get at that I didn't really touch on appropriately, and now that we're watching it, it works perfectly. Like, this is the thing. He's like, oh my god, some trans women will be like at that 10 nanomole per liter range. Dude, that's so bad. Oh my god, they're at the limit of what we allow. Like, not realizing that that's what he said. They're at the limit of what we allow. He's like, oh my God, some women will be eligible to compete at the limits we set.
Oh no.
Holy shit.
What will we do?
Wait,
Oh.
what? You hate it every time he hates testicles? Oh, says testicles. I was so confused for a moment. I'm like, he said he hated testicles?
No, he's just keeps going on about like having testicles basically, or some importance of whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. Ah, we both played at the same time.
Nope. That's my next topic.
Woodford seems to be taking it as a given that since these are the limits for sport, that most trans women in sport will aim to sit on the very edge or said limit.
Yeah, I will say that much. So, like, they, as in Essence of Thought, I feel so bad. I don't know Essence of Thought's pronouns. But they bring up that the rebuttal is most trans women athletes won't be at that range. But the actual rebuttal is the one I just made, which is, so what? They're at the limit of what we allow.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. I also agree. I don't agree that trans women are like trying to skirt that 10 nanomole per liter range. To me, I don't know the science behind this, but that seems like something that would be impressively hard to narrow up to like 9.8 nanomoliters. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like that seems like something that would be impressively difficult because testosterone is impacted by what you've done. So, like, Sports Science did a really interesting one. Sports Science is a ESPN thing that talks about some stuff in sports sometimes with science. I know, super advanced. But
Yeah.
they did one where they tested a myth that if you have sex the night before a game, you perform worse. So what they did was they actually had a top-tier athlete come in, do some work, and then he went home with his wife, and then came back, and that was all part of the test or whatever. And then he came back and did another workout. He outperformed himself the second day. He did better the second day. But they were like, now this could just have been like a psychological thing. What if he was psychologically holding himself back because he, likes to think that he doesn't want to, not have sex before games or whatever, right? But they also tested his testosterone levels before and after, and they were increased because of the sexual activity. So to try and nail this range while also being a top tier athlete and also balancing normal personal, that seems so absurd to me.
Yeah.
It's different than the thing that he tried to make a point about with Arnold Schwarzenegger, talking about like, I did testosterones and then 8 to 9 months before the tournament I stopped. That is something that's reasonable when it talks about steroids. But if you're like, okay, but we're going to do testing year round and now try to do the same thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work.
But how does that relate to reality? According to the guidelines put out by the International Planned Parenthood Federation, anti-androgens, also known as testosterone blockers, should be used to reduce the rates of testosterone in trans women's bodies to somewhere between 30 to 100 nanograms per deciliter, just above 3 nanomoles per liter. The typical range for
just above 3 nanomoles per liter. So that means I probably have a testosterone. I'm guessing I'm guessing I'm below that then. I mean, I only have the last test I took was 16 nanograms per deciliter. So I assume I'm below 3.
Mm-hmm. By a wide margin.
Yeah.
a cis woman.
From here, Ethel goes on to cite recommendations from several other medical institutions to bolster her point.
None of which come anywhere near the 288 nanograms per deciliter, the 10 nanomoles per liter that Woodford is crying about.
And she concludes by reasoning that because of this, trans women are at a disadvantage in regards to testosterone.
In fact, many of these suggested targets cap trans women's testosterone levels at the lower end of a typical range for cis women. So if anyone is at a sporting disadvantage in regard to testosterone, it's most of trans women on HRT.
Now, to be honest, this objection is naive. The truth is that athletes have, and still do, sacrifice their health and safety in pursuit of their goals, as they know all too well that if they don't, they'll be outcompeted by those who do. Back when steroids were legal, and like today, not medically recommended, athletes happily admitted to taking them.
Steroids are taken 8 or 9, 10 weeks before a competition. It's not a healthy thing to do, but it's being used.
Did you take them?
I take them. I took them, yeah, up until the competition. 8 or 9 weeks before competition.
8 to 9 weeks, not months. My bad.
Everybody had to do in order to get an equal chance.
Yeah.
To,
Still,
to compete.
The error, the margin for error fits within what I would call a reasonable amount for a human. When you're talking about managing the difference between 5 nanomoles per liter and 10 nanomoles per liter, like that's not what Arnold's doing here, and in any semblance of the word. Like,
well, yeah,
his steroid regimen is almost irrelevant to his life.
Yeah.
If it's like a drug test for a job. Oh, I just have to quit doing drugs for a month before. It's not like, oh, I could be tested next week and I've got to make sure that I have less than 0.02 whatever per deciliter, whatever in my blood system at the time. It's 2 entirely different sets of drug testing.
Yeah.
And even when steroids were banned, athletes did, and still do, everything they can to pass drug screening, despite the fact that they know that getting caught will likely end their career. Another more recent example that comes to mind is MMA and the issue of testosterone replacement therapy. Long story short, institutions such as the UFC once allowed participants who had a prescription.
No, Pages of Dreams. He wasn't comparing men taking testosterone to trans men taking testosterone. He was comparing trans Olympic athletes managing their testosterone levels in the nanomoles per deciliter level. Right? That level?
Nanograms per deciliter is how it's generally brought up. They were doing it in
nanomoles per liter. That's what it was.
Yeah, nanomoles per liter, which it sounds like actually thinking things through. It sounds like 50 nanograms per deciliter is 200 was one, whatever. I'm not going.
It doesn't matter. The point is like his point was that because Arnold Schwarzenegger took performance enhancing drugs leading up to his competitions, that trans women in Olympic athletic sports would be trying to tailor their testosterone levels within an impressively really small range in order to attain an advantage in competition sports. Not unlikely, but he's comparing two things that are different. He's talking about someone who can quit taking drugs and then go back to a normal level of testosterone in 6 to 8 weeks versus someone who is tested 4 or 5 times a year and has to maintain a testosterone balance that is substantially lower and in an impressively minuscule level of margin for error.
Yeah, but also, you have to. There's also the disadvantage of just the gender dysphoria, like giving yourself gender dysphoria to win a competition. It's after all that work just to.
Well, I don't know if that would be the case. I mean, at 10 nanomoles per liter, would you really start to feel those effects return?
No. I mean, like if you're trying to, to do that, you would have to stop taking. So you probably have to do stuff to get testosterone spikes.
I mean, you could, juice or some shit. I don't know. I don't
know. It's
like my point is to maintain such a really small margin for error doesn't fit within the reality of being human.
Yeah.
RT to compete. As a result, it has been suggested that participants took steroids to suppress their natural testosterone, and then, after their cycle, went to their doctor in the attempt and very often success of being prescribed TRT. They didn't care about their health, they cared about winning. Why? Because they're athletes, and that's what athletes do. They do what it takes to win. The point is, athletes will, more often than not, operate at the very limits of what's permitted. And since the IOC, as of 2015, no longer requires trans women to undergo gender reassignment surgery to compete, and hence keep their testicles, hovering at around 8 to 9 nanomoles per litre is an extremely viable advantage for trans women to use.
No, it's not.
In fact,
for it to be an extremely viable advantage, it would have to be demonstrated that hovering at 8 to 10 nanomoles per liter would be an extremely viable advantage, and you haven't done so. More feels in chat.
Yeah, but not just that. You'd also have to demonstrate that cis women aren't doing the same exact goddamn thing to try to using performance-enhancing drugs. It's so hard to to say for sure.
This is one of the primary reasons that Joanna Harper, among many others, are campaigning to reduce the level to 5 nanomoles per litre.
I am part of a committee that has recently recommended that we lower that limit from 10 to 5.
Now, what's a little odd to me is that in other areas, Ethel seemingly accepts this competitive inevitability.
The Olympics and similar national and international level sports are not a children's gym class. They are the pinnacle of human capability. Nations are willing to pour millions of dollars into Olympic teams for the chance to win gold medals, and they'll do their research to figure out the easiest way to maximize that.
Indeed they will, and they know that hovering at 8 to 9 nanomoles provides trans women with a massive advantage in many events.
I love the way you cut me off there. Let's see the rest of what I had to say. Nations are willing to pour millions of dollars into Olympic teams for the chance to win gold medals, and they'll do their research to figure out the easiest way to maximize that. So if there were strong evidence that trans women had a clear advantage over cis women, it would be very reasonable to expect nations to start hunting for trans athletes.
Damn.
Not for the benefit of said athletes, but to ensure the best shot at gold in the Olympics to uphold a capitalistic sense of national pride.
Boom.
Well, that doesn't happen. There are next to no trans Olympians, let alone any all-trans lineups. But that's not the only editing used to make my position appear weaker than it actually is. You see, Woodford started his segment about science by talking about testosterone, before he went on to assert that testosterone didn't change a multitude of other factors which were apparently also responsible for the advantage trans women have over cis women.
To steal an analogy from a friend, saying that transgender women should be able to compete against women so long as they identify as one and have testosterone levels lower than one is like saying that a Formula 1 car should be able to compete as a superbike so long as it identifies as one and has less fuel than one.
Now I just want you lot, the viewers, to hazard a guess. Did I bring up this point about the Olympics in response to the discussion on testosterone, or after he'd already gone on to assert that the traits which survive androgen deprivation offer an advantage? Of course, it was the latter. Just consider the timestamps involved. I began covering Woodford's testosterone argument at 6 minutes 15 seconds into my video. I then went on to start tackling his claims about the traits which remained after androgen deprivation at 13 minutes and 20 seconds in. Meanwhile, the first time I brought up trans participation in the Olympics as an argument was in the 41st minute of my video. Woodford's arguments had moved beyond testosterone, and so too had my response. But all of that context is completely missing from Woodford's video, since if he included it, it'd show what an actively dishonest person he is.
Damn.
And what happens when we acknowledge this fact? Does Woodford's response about the changing rules make sense? No. Gonads or no gonads, whatever trait survived one form of androgen deprivation will survive both. Now we'll come back to Woodford's editing later, since it's not just the once this happens. Yet I'd also like to discuss the rather trivializing way in which Woodford presents what trans people who feel the need to physically transition go through. Namely, gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is anxiety and depression which results from failing to adhere to one's gender. Now, often we talk about this in relation to a society refusing to let a trans person be who they are, but it can also be self-inflicted. But the point is, this is not something that is a risk to be weighed. It's not a, I might be caught. It's not a, I might develop physical problems down the line. It's a, this will fuck me up psychologically and make it so I can't train. What's really interesting is that in one of the anecdotes Woodford uses, that of track runners Miller and Yearwood, both were competing in open track competitions. And yet, as I noted in my original video, in spite of the fact that all they had to do was identify as female and the CIAC rules stated they would be allowed to compete, both were on HRT. Adding to insult, your comparison to what happened at the UFC is incredibly flawed.
Sorry, before it gets too far off that, I did want to bring up, like,
Sure.
because I always want to keep bringing up over and over, and I know you've got viewers or whatever, but the best way to describe my gender dysphoria experience is just the sort of a proprioceptive tactile sensation mismatch, where it's just like there are aspects of the brain that are there to recognize what aspects of your body are your aspects of your body. Like, you don't consider pimples a part of your body. That's why it's very easy to want to scratch off a pimple. Like, it's not, you probably don't even think about it when you do it. And that's the reason why, like, body horror is a thing. It's a whole horror genre, because it would be really disturbing to have a body that your brain is not considering your own. And that is the best way I can assess the feeling of gender dysphoria and hormone replacement therapy, just causing the aspects of my body, the secondary sexual characteristic aspects of my body to feel like my own, makes like such a positive impact. I wouldn't want to jump into the horror of being off that just for competition. That's hard. I would have to want it more than I want to live.
Yeah, we talked about that though. I'm not necessarily sure that riding that line gives you that feeling though. So that's I'm not.
Oh yeah.
Sure
No,
I'm
not sure about riding. If we're talking about like riding the line, yeah, I'm not sure if that.
And I'm not even sure that like trans women who take steroids to get buff experience that either. So, and as we've talked, not all trans women experience the tactile issue that you do as well. So,
yeah,
it's not necessarily super like impressively valid to this specific conversation, but I do appreciate
but I do want to just blurt out anyway, because it's my opinion, it's my feels. I get to shove my feels down your throat just and ignore the reels. No, there's some reels, whatever.
Dude, I do read my chat. You just haven't said anything important, Tundra. Sorry, my dude.
Ready?
Dude, you're not neglected. I mean, be more funny. I'll say some shit to you. I am mad and buff. Watch out. Yo, kid, read your chat. Please. We feel neglected. Read it out loud. Okay. Feel better?
I mean, I feel better.
Like I said, dude, say something important. Ask a question. I'll talk to you. Right now, we're reviewing this video. And if you... I'm going to be honest, I just want to get banned. My bad.
I will say I am the worst person to talk with about that. I spent with all those trolls, I just like having a nice conversation, getting a nice viewer count. Anyway, should I just press play now?
Yeah, let's move on. We clicked it again at the same time.
To elaborate on that in ways Woodford failed to do, cis men would take steps to reduce their testosterone to receive medical recommendations to receive testosterone replacement therapy. So, whilst they'd be without testosterone for a short period, again, this would only be a short period before they had it replaced. With trans people on HRT, that's not an option. If they commit to that, they have to commit to gender dysphoria for the rest of their sporting career. So, to even place the two in the same category of personal cost is just really showing off just how little you know about the experience of trans people.
See, like this is, I guess this is why you brought up your point, because this is the point that Essence of Thought makes. But I'm not necessarily sure that this is super valid, because do we know that like taking steroids or trying to be like or trying to ride that line causes gender dysphoria to increase? Like I'm not sure. I mean, it might.
Like,
it very well might.
If you're talking about that line, it's really hard to say, because I mean, obviously, because we're talking about like at most 200 nanograms per deciliter, which isn't like the worst.
See, because like you said, you're like per the IOC rules, you're at like 3 per the way they measure it. You're like 3 nanomoles per liter, right? That's what you kind of mathed yours out to be.
Something like, or no, less than 3.
Right. So, but like, I mean, we're talking about like maybe potentially tripling your current amounts.
Well,
that
I mean,
might cause
I'm
some
below
issues.
what?
I don't know.
Well, no, I'm below 30. 30 to 100 is where it would be ideal for me to be at for in terms of nanograms per deciliter, because I understand that one more.
Okay.
30 to 100 is where I should be at. Mine is, or I've been low, and it's not like the worst thing, but yeah, 16 nanograms per deciliter is not a lot of testosterone.
Right. So, but like I was saying, so like if we quadrupled your current amount, do you think that would cause some issues for you?
No, because that would be like 64.
Oh, so we would have to do a whole shitload more than I guess to get to 10.
Yeah, you'd have to like just go like 10 times the amount of testosterone.
So if we gave you 10 times the amount, you think that would cause some issues?
Yeah, I know. No, it's a good point about the writing the line thing, because I'm not sure, because when you're talking about like 200 nanograms or less, that's getting really close to the because well, I mean, ideal for transitioning is 100 nanograms or less. So I don't know. It would be definitely
to be fair, FML Panda, we're talking about top tier athletes. We're not talking about your average everyday person.
Yeah.
We're talking about people who literally eat, sleep, breathe like athletics. So these people have significantly more testosterone per deciliter than your average person would, for sure. I mean,
yeah.
I would wager that I'm not working out as much as I should be, so I would imagine I might even be below the levels that we're talking about for top tier female athletes.
No. I almost guarantee that you've got
yeah, maybe my scale in my head is wrong then, I guess. But either way, I know that we're not talking about your average person. We're definitely not talking about your average person.
Therapy, well, the average for men is like 300 to 700 nanograms per deciliter or something.
So I might actually be a little above that 10 level that they need for the IOC then.
You'd be significantly above. You'd be at like 15 at least.
Well, I'm significantly above. I was talking about like in increments of 5. So yeah, about. But like that's what I'm talking about is like, so we're talking about like just some supremely top tier athletes. That's all I was trying to point out.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean that's why it's hard for me to say, because I know the average for men is like 300 to 700 or whatever, or 300 to 1,000, something like that.
Right.
And I know before hormone replacement therapy, I had like 500 nanograms per deciliter, and I didn't have like super high testosterone, or at the very least. Well, to be fair, It might just be because my brain's likely more female in terms of receptors. I might just not have been able to process the amount of testosterone that I was producing. I don't know. Anyway.
Right, we can play it.
As for Harper and what she says, isn't it funny how you decided to leave this clip out?
Well, I actually agree with you there. And in fact, I am part of a committee that has recently recommended that we lower that limit from 10 to 5. And it's important to understand that that's a limit. The vast majority of transgender women will keep their testosterone below 3 and in fact below 2 and usually below 1 nanomole.
Right.
So this is an upper limit, but I absolutely agree. 10 is too.
I'm just now I'm trying to process below 1 nanomole.
Well, I mean, think about it like this, because she just kind of pointed out what we were talking about, and Pages of Dreams dropped the thing in my chat. 300 nanograms per deciliter is the normal for an average man, which is like around that 15 range. So yeah, 10 might be a little high.
Yeah, no. I don't disagree. I was just thinking of like a trans woman wanting to, or the average of like, 2 I could see, but like 1 seems like a bit low. I mean, that being said, my testosterone was below 10, or was in the single digits in terms of.
Again, we still don't have like what is the top tier female athlete's average range? Because they're freaking top tier athletes. They're working out and fucking every day, eating specific foods to gain more muscle. Like it can't possibly be that 8 to 60 range in nanograms to deciliter that Pages of Dreams linked to. Like it's got to be substantially higher than that.
Anyway, should I play?
Yeah.
Too high, and our committee has recommended bringing it down to 5.
Now, as for her suggestions, I disagree with her. Not because of how this will impact trans women, but how such regulations are already impacting cis intersex women, such as Cassis Semenya. Again, we return to my
that's a
rule
good
of thumb.
point.
If your standard excludes cis women, it's a bad standard and shouldn't then be applied to trans women, since that actually demonstrates that said trans women are within the range cis women exist in. Now, the only other way I could think this to be relevant is if you believe cis men will lie, pretend to be trans women, and then use that to compete. At which point, not only do you seek to punish both cis and trans women for the potential actions of cis men, just tell me, how does that differ from the "and men will claim to be trans to access women's bathroom" myth?
Good point.
How? Also, a slightly pedantic point, but one I owe scientist Sam, since he's somewhat annoyed at your general lack of knowledge on the subject. Steroids are still legal in bodybuilding. There's still no risk for the participants in said activities to talk openly about them.
The next objection I'd like to address relates to men typically having larger bodies than women.
But the presupposition that larger bodies benefits trans athletes is just that, a presupposition in need of evidence to back it up.
Yes, having a large body isn't an advantage in many events, such as equestrian and gymnastics, but in events such as weightlifting and hammer throw, to give just 2 examples, it very much is. In fact, the fact that men are on average taller and wider than women widely is recognised as one of the primary factors for the massive gap between them. And again, HRT doesn't sufficiently mitigate height and width. If Mountsy, for example, hadn't have experienced male puberty, she wouldn't be as tall and as wide as she is.
Except she's within the total range for cis women in a team sport, so the impact of her abilities will be lessened as well, so you've really got no point here. And as already noted, many non-team strength-based sports already account for height by weight categories. Categories, I should note, I
just want to pause here. That second point is actually a really bad statement. So like, all right, so we're competing in a team sport, but I get to have the Hulk on my team. I mean, we're in a team sport, so his individual contributions will be lessened. Like, that's not a valid argument. The first argument was the valid one, that she fits within the range requirements for the actual competition that she's competing in. It like,
yeah, and the other thing, the weight category thing.
Like, that's just a statement of team competition. Like, team competition comes about because we want to lessen the impact of an individual because it's a team. Like
Yeah.
we're literally talking about definitions here. Like, that's why we have teams versus individual competition, because we want to lessen the impacts of one individual.
Yeah, but I mean, LeBron James is basically a team.
No, that's the point that I was trying to make earlier. Is like, this is why competition is what matters and not fairness, because you do get to have LeBron James on your team.
Yeah.
In full favor of increasing for female sports, since they cut off much.
Can I also have Steph Curry?
I guess, but that would be a little unfair.
Oh yeah, no, it's totally unfair. But it'd be an awesome team. It'd be an almost unbeatable team.
So that's why the Olympics are a wash for America, because you get to have LeBron James, Steph Curry, all the best players, and none of the bad players, and only the best players. That's why America wins 172-44.
Anyway, sorry.
Much lower than male categories, even though they have large women, both trans and cis, competing.
Anyhow, the last objection I'm going to tackle is the most prominent study that Ethel referenced.
There is no direct and consistent research to suggest that transgender female individuals and transgender male individuals have an athletic advantage in sport, and therefore the majority of competitive sports policies are discriminatory against this population.
Indeed, this is the very study that many claim, including Dusty Smith, proves that trans women have no advantage.
Sports, medicine, trans. That's how easy this is to find. And,
Dusty's gotten sold,
boom,
man. I remember watching him when he looked younger.
Comes up, the most basic amount of research you could possibly fucking do, right? So why did he not share the most in-depth scientific study with his audience on the subject he is talking about? Instead, why did he show a Joe Rogan clip instead of showing science? Well, in my opinion, it's because the most in-depth study that is done on the subject goes against his narrative, and he doesn't want you to know that.
Now,
hold on, I gotta rewind just like a second.
For all the logic, motherfuckers.
Oh shit, where'd it go? There we go.
On the subject he is.
Look at
results.
I want to know. I want to know what Dusty's downloading. What are all these MP4s? And why are they just sitting at the bottom of his tray? Like,
oh, I was thinking you're going to just bring up the results that were highlighted in relation to sports-related activity. This review found the lack of inclusive and comfortable environments to the primary barrier to participation for transgender people. This review also found transgender people had a mostly negative experience in competitive sports because of the restrictions that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. That's not what I was laughing about. It was about the MP4.
It was all the MP4.
I don't know. I was just really distracted. Like, what is he doing? What are these? Like, what are you doing, Dusty? Why haven't you just cleared your tray? See, I don't have a download tray. You don't see that on my screen.
Just don't kink shame. He's big into.
He's just got a shitload of downloaded porn on the bottom of his screen.
Oh no, he's just really turned on by the fact that there's download trays, that there's porn there. It doesn't matter that he ever watches it. He's just like knowing that is his king.
Is talking about. Instead, why did he show a Joe Rogan clip instead of sharing the science? Well, in my opinion, it's because
conclusion.
The most in-depth study that is done on the subject goes against his narrative, and he doesn't want you to know that.
Now, I'm going to thoroughly break down all of the relevant papers, including this one, in my future video. But to briefly address it now, let's go.
Sorry, I still love that he's just like, I don't have anything to go against this, but like, I definitely will find proper papers to disagree. In the future.
He literally just admits to, I'm gonna go confirm my biases. I'll make a video about it later.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's totally what that is. That is.
Yeah, good call out. That's a solid call out.
step further than Dusty and do
The most basic amount of
reading. First off, if you read the title, you can see that it's a systemic review of the literature relating to sport participation and competitive sport policies, which is to say, it's not a review of athletic performance, a fact that the authors make even more clear in their objective. Scrolling down, if you read the method, you'll see that of the 8 studies that it references, 6 are interviews, with most having a sample size less than 5.
I wanted to review this for a second.
Well, one of those has a sample size of 12. I put as having or no, 10 for another one. Whatever. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So half are less than 5. So it's not most are less than 5. Half are less than 5. Oh, unless there's more.
Not only that, but this is specifically transgendered people, transgendered athletes. Like, is he asking whether or not we have like hundreds, if not thousands, of transgender athletes to poll?
Yeah, I mean that's the problem with it. Like sometimes you just need one study. Like I have a good example of this. So there is a study of a man with complete androgen insensitivity, a trans man, so who does not produce testosterone. Most individuals who don't produce testosterone like that end up as women, but clearly this suggests that whether or not you experience gender dysphoria, this individual experienced gender dysphoria specifically, is not the formation of such is not related to testosterone because it can't be. And all it takes is one study in that case, and you're not going to find another trans man with specifically complete androgen insensitivity, or not for a while, because that's like one person in the world type thing.
Troll question for you. Can I ask you a personal question? If you had been a tool, what kind of tool would you be? I think I'd be a lighter.
What sort of tool would I be?
I don't know, but I think lighter's a good answer.
I don't use a lighter much. I mean, lighters are cool. Not to knock lighters. What sort of tool? I think I'd be a scissors.
A scissors?
Yeah.
Is that a joke, or did I just make that a joke?
I assume you just made that a joke.
Because you're a lesbian.
Yeah.
What answers do you normally get, Nejman? Nejman? Not blue name.
But
hammer? Really?
Why?
What?
You don't hammer much. You cut open things with the scissors.
Screwdriver?
All the time.
People are being so unoriginal. What the fuck?
Scissors are so helpful.
Lighters are something I use, and it's cool. Man, people don't think, okay? People need to think more. Thanks for the question. Let's get back to this.
And only one study actually relates to trans athletic performance, that being Goran and Bunk. And if you read their study, you'll see that, among other things, that while HRT
the study you misrepresented
reduces muscle mass in trans women, it doesn't reduce it to anywhere near the same level as non-trans women. Anyhow.
Wait. Even if even if you take his completely incorrect point, saying that's nowhere near, it's just like I wouldn't say that's the case. I mean, that's pretty close. That's not nowhere near.
Right. No, because it's the bar, not the little part you
Well, yeah,
highlighted.
but even the highlighted thing is still like significantly reduced, and it is pretty close.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
Remember, women
Back
have
to the systemic
100%
study.
less muscle mass than men.
Oh god.
As from here, things just get worse. The authors not only assert that
There is no direct and consistent research to suggest that transgender female individuals and transgender male individuals have an athletic advantage in sport,
but also that there's no direct or consistent research to suggest that they have any advantage at any stage of their transition, e.g., cross-sex hormones and gender-confirming surgery. I'll say that again. Any stage. Which is to say that if your position is that trans women should be able to compete so long as they're on HRT, then you ain't getting it from this review. But yeah, more on that to come.
First of all, let's deal with the straw man. We didn't claim that it proved trans women don't have an advantage. We noted the fact that it shows those calling for action to be taken against trans women, people such as yourself, lack any and all basis for said calls to action. Therefore, said policies are discriminatory. The distinction is important. As noted, the burden of proof when it comes to stripping away a demographic's human rights is on you. Also, how does the study judge the policies without first reviewing the science available? I mean, you do go on to acknowledge the fact that it does in fact review the science available, but at the start you pretend like the fact that the title contains the words participation and policies somehow excludes it as a review of the science, which is completely dishonest. This really does seem to be a mad scramble to find anything you can to downplay what the study shows. And you're correct. The samples are limited and the study sparse, but it is better to use what evidence we do have properly than is to reject it and go on pure opinion.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. We don't have thousands of trans athletes to poll. So
what about all those secret trans athletes that are just... I mean, did you know that every male athlete since the 50s was actually a trans man this whole time?
What the fuck? I don't think it works like that.
No, it secretly does.
I say
I mean, LeBron James was born female. As soon as he started taking the testosterone, his height just like shot up.
Properly, since once again you drag up your mistake on muscle mass, which you really should have read properly, because you demonstrated complete incompetence when it comes to the science being discussed, and a large part of that seems to come from sheer laziness. You seem to have swallowed Noel's arguments without a second thought, and had you asked anyone, they would have informed you of the fact that not only is Noel not an expert, he's a dishonest hack. That's why I outright refused to engage with him. I got tired of the way he kept editing my arguments to make himself look better. Much like yourself.
Damn.
But you are the one who chose to accept what he said without scrutiny. That fuck up has rendered this video as bad as your original when it comes to intellectual content, or worse when you consider the time and resources you've had. That is entirely on you. So that's the intellectual arguments dealt with. What I haven't gone over are the first 5 minutes of Woodford's video. That's because this is less about Woodford and more about the trans people he's hurting, and I thought the science being presented was more important to start with. But that's out of the way now. So why don't we turn back time to see what Woodford had to say for himself at the start. As always, please check out our other videos. You can also support Essence of Thought by Patreon.
Is the second video out or no?
Help us reach our goal of becoming ad-free.
No, this video came out like a couple days ago.
Damn.
But yeah. No, this is... Yeah. So, yeah, so Rationality Rules is kind of a piece of shit.
Dude, yeah, what the fuck?
I mean, with all the blatant bullshit, the trying to him trying to make himself look great or whatever, or it's just the whole feels versus facts thing, because Essence of Thought has almost only or almost exclusively brought up facts. And so it's just like, and Rationality acts like those facts because he disagrees with the facts that they're actually feelings, and his feelings are actually facts because he agrees with them.
Yeah, dude. Man. It all rests on this. Everything else. Everything. Let me try starting again without failing.
Okay.
This all rests on the fucking dead horse. If he didn't have the fucking dead horse, we wouldn't be having this fucking conversation. Sports is not about fairness. It's about fucking competition. Like, for fuck's sakes.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we've had the the longest, most entertaining.
I need to move
chatting.
on from something than this because my brain hurts.
Yeah, no, I am going to take a break, and then I'm going to head into the pleasant world of Azeroth. And I assume you are too.
Yeah, I'm gonna play some WoW. And
Yeah,
hopefully
okay.
it makes me feel better.
Yeah, so I'm going to end this, and I'll be back in like 15 minutes or something.
All right.
Anyway, that was fun stream, fun times. I'm sorry for all the stuff you have to look at when it comes to editing. Because it was 3 hours of content.
Yeah, man, I don't know. This is painful. It was hard.